Sorry, boy, but his captain's got to teach his men what happens to those what crossing.
Captain's got to teach stuff.
Good morning from the Batcave. It is Wednesday, September 4th, 2024, and I actually tried to do like half this yesterday, and I realized I forgot to press record, so that was discouraging, so I had to start over. But we're going to keep going on this series on Samuel. We're going to actually bridge from 1 Samuel into 2 Samuel and kind of look at the decline and fall of Saul, and then the rise of David into the point where he's a king, but they're in a civil war to obtain total control of all of Israel, and then we'll probably stop there. So we're going to do probably chapter 23 to about chapter 3 in 2 Samuel, so about 10 chapters. If you remember last time, David was in this cave of Adullam, so let's look at a map here. And Adullam is right up here. Now this whole region here is Judah. You see Bethlehem up here. And the next city up, if you just were to get right above this map here, would be Jerusalem, and that's kind of the border of Benjamin and Judah. Now, Judah is still loyal to Saul. David had to get his family all the way to Moab because he didn't feel that they were safe. They're from Bethlehem, which is not that far from, Gibeah is probably like 5 miles north of that, maybe 10 at the most. It's not that far away, so he gets his family over to Moab, which is going to be down in here. And then he at first tries to go to Gath, and he's going to try to get himself in the service of one of the Philistine kings, which I don't know if he had a good relationship with him before, or if he just thought my enemy's enemy might think of me as their friend. But he gets scared and basically starts acting crazy, okay? He's going to get back to this king and essentially serve under his protection somewhat later on, but he doesn't do that right now. So he's sitting up here in this cave of Adullam, and that's when he's going to try to break out of there and try to establish kind of a base for himself. So he is starting to collect men to him. Remember, he had a basically like a raiding party that would be with him, and I would assume these are guys who probably are on foot. I doubt that they're on horseback, but essentially these bands would go around. Remember, most of Israel is up in these mountain regions right here. This is where you've got Judah, Ephraim, and Benjamin primarily, and then right down below you're going to have the Danites down here. Which ones are left? You're going to have Judites over here on the other side of the river, and they're going to go up into the north. The Canaanites are mostly subdued by this time, but their core is always going to be up in the mountains right here because they're harder to oppress up in the mountains. And the Philistines are going to have down here, and they're going to go to battle against them, and they're going to go around these mountains typically and raid, and then they're going to hire other people to raid around there too. So you're going to have Amalekites doing that. That's going to be the main two people that are giving them guff at this time. Is going to be the Amalekites and the Philistines. Most of the Canaanites are pretty subdued by this time. So David's next spot is going to go to this Keilah right here, and we're just going to start reading right there in chapter 23. So it says, Then they told David, saying, Behold, the Philistines fight against Keilah, and they rob the threshing floors. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go and smite the Philistines? And the Lord said to David, Go, smite the Philistines, and save Keilah. And David's men said to him, Behold, we be afraid here in Judah. How much more if we come to Keilah and against the armies of the Philistines? In other words, there's just 600 of them, and they've got armies of Philistines. Basically, I don't know if they're besieging Keilah or just raiding it. It's probably not a full, huge army, but they're basically, David's inquiring of the Lord to see if they should go up. And it looks like It looks like this is after Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, has fled to David, and he's basically, they're using the Urim and Thummim to ask yes-no questions from the Lord about whether or not they should do a thing. So then it says, Then David inquired of the Lord yet again, and the Lord answered him and said, Arise, go down to Keilah, and I will deliver the Philistines into your hand. So David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines and brought away their cattle, and smote them with a great slaughter, and David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. And it came to pass when Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, fled to David down in Keilah, that he came down with an ephod in his hand. So when he came down with the ephod in his hand. So while this is at the end here, I would assume all this inquiring of the Lord is done through the priest. You got to remember, yes, David has prophetic gifting in his music. You're going to find that in his Psalms, and that's about it. You don't have David necessarily hearing from the Lord directly on a regular basis. He has a prophetic gifting through the songs he writes, and those songs are going to be prophetic. But he is getting his direct guidance from the Lord, it seems, through the priest. So remember, you've got this one remaining priest, Abiathar, who survives when Ahimelech and 85 other people get killed by Saul, and he's chilling with David. And he's giving him these answers. So then, this says, and it was told to Saul that David came to Keilah, and Saul says, God has delivered him into my hand, for he is shut in by entering into a town that has gates and bars. Now this is amazing that Saul knows God is not, he should know God's not for him, and yet he's like, God has delivered him into my hand. He is definitely deceived. Saul called the people together to go to war and went down to Keilah and besieged David and his men. And David knew that Saul secretly practiced mischief against him, and he said to Abiathar the priest, bring hither the ephod. Then said David, O Lord God of Israel, thy servant has certainly heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah and destroy the city for my sake. Will the men of Keilah deliver me into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Lord God of Israel, I beseech thee, tell thy servant. And the Lord said he will come down. So again, this is somebody's narrative. It's not like the Lord speaking directly to David. They're asking when he's saying through the ephod. This ephod is basically like a vestment that they would have over them, almost like, imagine like an apron that would go over their shoulders and down, below their waist, and it's got these two stones in it. And somehow, I don't know exactly how this works, they're using these two stones to divine whether God is saying yes or no, basically. So then it says, then said David, will the men of Keilah deliver me into the hand of Saul? And the Lord said, they will deliver you up. Then David and his men, which are about 600, arose and departed to Keilah, and went wherever they could go. And it was told to Saul that David had escaped from Keilah, and he forbade to go forth. Or he forbore to go forth. In other words, he pulled back from going after David. So David has these 600 men with him, and this is pretty much going to be his whole team until Saul is dead. We don't know exactly who these men are. We know some of them are his relatives. Some of these guys are like Hittites. These are guys who probably would have been more like mercenaries to the army of Saul. So these are going to be some guys who are probably part of David's band and loyal to him. Others are people who are just probably on the outs with Saul. So you're going to have people who have debts. You're going to have people who have maybe no inheritance rights in the land. So they get theirs through pillaging and stuff. And there's just no prospects for them. But in terms of David's band, they can't really just go back to Saul because they've been serving with David for years. Now, I did make a mistake. David becomes king at age 30, not 40. So these people could have been serving with David for up to like a decade or more. Okay? So you have these people, and some of them are his relatives, so they can't just go back to Saul because Saul's going to be suspicious of them too, because they could potentially be spies for David. So they're rolling with David, and then it says that Saul kind of leaves them alone after he does this, and so they're out of Keilah. And then it says David abode in the wilderness and the strongholds, and he remained in the mountains in the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul sought him every day, but God delivered him not into his hand. So this wilderness of Ziph, if you see down here, if you see this square region right here, this is pretty much the highlands area of Judah, and this is going to be the Hebron territory. So if you remember, Caleb got Hebron, and him and Othniel basically took out the giants that were in Hebron. So Caleb's going to get this highland area, Joshua's going to get this highland area, and that's where you've got Judah and Ephraim, kind of the two chiefs there. So Caleb's going to have a lot of descendants around this area, and the Judahites are strong here. And what you seem to have with Judah is, again, they're contributing to the armies of Saul, but their real strength and their real numbers are up here in the mountains, and they've got lowlands here. So they're probably fairly busy because they've got a lot of lowlands, and as far as I would assume, as far as Beersheba down here, they are covering these territories. Up here, the Philistines are oppressing them, but remember, Saul and his armies are coming down from up here. They've got Danites up here. They're starting to strengthen their armies. So they're going to mostly compete up here, but the Judahites going to kind of have to guard all this. So you probably have a lot of their armies occupied with their own territory, and then their fortified strongholds and stuff like this are going to be up in the cities, or up in these mountains here. And because it's up in those mountains, you see how this one main road, this is like, I think this is I don't know if this is the King's Highway, but this is like the main road that's going to go up from Beersheba. Remember that old line from Dan to Beersheba? Beersheba is kind of the southernmost point before you get into land that's kind of mixed, and it's kind of a no man's land. Amalekites are still roaming through there. It's technically Judah's territory, but you've got the Philistines down here pulling weight, and then Amalekites running through here. So you see all these cities, how they're all up in the highlands here, and that's because that's where it would have been safe to populate. But then you're going to have farms and herd land all down here, all the way down through. This is where the Dead Sea is. I don't think the Dead Sea was ever fresh. I think it was always salt water, but it was probably bigger than it is right now. It's been drying up for quite some time. So David's going to go up in this wilderness of Ziph, and you see this Carmel down here and Maon. This is kind of where a lot of it's going to take place. And then over here towards the Dead Sea is En-Gedi. I actually hiked around here when I went to Israel. This is kind of a land with a bunch of kind of rocky, cavey type places, but like springs of water and stuff like that too. And there's going to be different forts in the wilderness areas around here where David and his men are going to hang out. So it says, David saw that Saul came to seek his life, and David was in the wilderness of Ziph in the wood. And Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the wood and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, fear not, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find me, and thou shalt be king over Israel, and I shall be next to thee. And that also my father Saul knows. So he feels like Saul knows David's going to be king one day. And he's basically just like, God's on your side. He's not going to stop you. And the two made a covenant before the Lord, and David abode in the wood, and Jonathan went to his house. So Jonathan is basically saying when something's going to happen to Saul, he kind of feels it. And he's basically saying to David, be loyal to me, don't kill my family, and I'll be your right hand when, you're king, basically. And then came the Ziphites to Saul and Gibeah, saying, doth not David hide himself with us in the strongholds in the wood, in the hill of Aquila, which is on the south of Jeshimon, which is somewhere around, we don't know. It's the wilderness area of Ziph. Let's see here. So there's all kinds of mountains and stuff around here. So it's somewhere right around here. And obviously these people are primarily loyal to Saul. He is their rightful king, and David is considered an outlaw now. So they're just like, hey, here he is. And they might just not like him and his band of men roaming around there because that's just suspicious to them, and they fear their stuff getting taken or having to support these 600 guys that are kind of outlaws. They don't really need the protection because they're Judah. So it seems like they're more likely going to, kind of just be like, get these guys out of here. So therefore, O king, come down according to all the desire of your soul, come down, and our part shall be delivered into the king's hand. And the Lord said, blessed be ye of the Lord, for you have had compassion on me. Go, I pray you, prepare yet, and know and see where his place and his haunt is, and who has seen him there. For it is told to me that he deals very subtly. In other words, I've heard he is tricky. Find out exactly where he is before I come down. See therefore and take knowledge of all the lurking places where he hides himself. And come ye again to me with certainty, and I will go with you, and it shall come to pass, if ye be in the land, that I will search him out throughout all the thousands of Judah. In other words, once you guys tell him, get the details on where he is, where he's coming and going from, I'll come down there with my armies, and we will search Judah man by man until he's given up. So they arose and went to Ziph before Saul, and David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon. And let's see. When Saul heard it, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. So now they've moved a little bit south of here from the Ziph area, and now they're in the Maon area. And Carmel, if you can kind of see here, it's kind of small, but Carmel's the road to En-Gedi, and then it goes up to connect to the main road, and Hebron is right here. And then you see Ziph connecting. So what they're doing is they're getting further and further off this main road, because this is the road where it's easier to have an army travel on. Around here, you're getting more into the territory of Hebron, and you see the cities are a little farther away and stuff like that. And David's got more routes to go that are off the beaten path. If he's here, he can be kind of potentially hemmed in with not a lot of places to go. So it says Saul went on this side of the mountain, and David and his men on that side of the mountain. And Saul made haste to get away for fear of Saul. And Saul and his men compassed David and his men round about to take them. And there came a messenger unto Saul, saying, Haste thee and come, for the Philistines have invaded the land. So Saul basically gets pulled off task on going after David because the Philistines are in the land. So Saul is going to have to skedaddle. Typically, the Philistines are going to be attacking from around here up to the north of here, so up around here. So that's where most of their attacks are. They hold this pretty securely. These plains right here, they're not necessarily looking for a fight. So when they get into a big fight, they usually get into a fight right here, because if you can control this crossing space of the Jordan over here, you've kind of got Israel divided and hemmed in, and you can kind of oppress most of the lowlands. They do have people up here, but not a ton. The Danites are up here, but they've been mixing with the Sidonians and sailing away, so they're not really much of a force. Most of what you have is up here, and if you can get that area surrounded, you're good. So it says, Wherefore Saul returned from pursuing David and went against the Philistines. Therefore they called the place Selahemahekalikoth, which basically means the stone of division. So it seems like they've kind of measured out, like, okay, this is how far we need to stay away before Saul can get to us easily. And it's some kind of stone of division. And so if Saul gets down here, remember the Philistines got spies around here, and so if they see the armies of Saul going down here because they're hunting David, maybe they don't know they're hunting David yet, but I would assume word is out. Then they're like, well, let's go attack up here then, because they're busy down here hunting David, right? And so they basically established a point where it's like, okay, if he gets down here, the Philistines go attack up here, so we're good everywhere south of here. And that seems to be where they chill. And David went up from thence and dwelt in the strongholds at En-gedi. It came to pass that when Saul returned from following the Philistines, that it was told him, Behold, David is in the wilderness of En-gedi. So now he's down here, close to the Dead Sea. And Saul took 3,000 chosen men of all of Israel and went to seek David and his men on the rocks and the wild goats. He came to the sheepcotes by the way, and there was a cave. And Saul went in to cover his feet or go to the bagnio. And David and his men remained in the sides of the cave. So he comes into the cave where they're hiding to relieve himself. That's what cover his feet means. And they're like, the men of David said to him, Behold, the day of which the Lord said unto thee, Behold, I will deliver thine enemy into thy hand, that thou mayest go and do unto him all that seems good unto thee. Now, we don't have a record of the Lord saying this to David, either through the priest or the prophet or anyone. His men just seem to be like, this is the Lord's doing. And this is kind of like one of the only times that David's going to be like, yeah, what the people want. And he's going to learn his lesson really quick. And David arose and cut the skirt of Saul's rope secretly, all ninja-like, privily. And it came to pass afterwards that David's heart smote him because he cut off Saul's skirt. So he's cut off the bottom of his robe. That's how close he was able to get to him, because he's just in a cave and he is a ninja, apparently. Or Saul's just very unattentive. I don't understand, even if it's dark, how you let somebody get that close to and not notice. And he said to his men, The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, to stretch my hand forth against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord. So David stayed his servants with these words, and suffered them not to rise against Saul. But Saul rose up out of the cave and went his way. So this is where David's going to do it, and he's going to feel the conviction, and he's immediately going to about face. And he is going to pull weight on all his men and say, I'm not going to touch the Lord's anointed, neither are you. And this is where he's very different from Saul. He is going to primarily care more about what the Lord thinks and the convictions of his heart than what his men think. Saul's going to be the opposite. He fears the people. Okay? So David arose afterwards, went out of the cave, and cried after Saul, saying, My lord the king. And when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth and bows himself. So he's going out of his way. He calls him my lord the king, and he's bowing down in his presence. Okay, probably not at his feet. He's probably a little ways away, but there he is. And David said to Saul, Wherefore hearest thou men's words, saying, Behold, David seeks thy hurt. Behold, this day thine eyes have seen how the Lord has delivered thee today into my hand in the cave. And some bade me to kill thee, but my eyes spared thee, and I said, I will not put forth my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Moreover, my father, see the skirt of my robe in my hand, for I cut off the skirt of thy robe, and killed thee not. Know thou that there is no evil nor transgression in my hand, and I have not sinned against thee, yet thou huntest my soul to take it. So he's basically saying, I could have killed you, but I didn't. So know that I'm not your enemy. And the Lord judge between me and thee, and the Lord avenge me of thee, but my hand shall not be upon thee. In other words, if someone's going to do it, the Lord's going to do it, not me. Now, you are going to find through the heavy shepherding movement. This is going to start with Watchman Nee, and it's going to go through the heavy shepherding movement, and it's going to get into your charismatic and Pentecostal churches, this idea that this is how you're supposed to treat your pastor. Okay? It could be pastor, boss, anyone. And I would say, yeah, this kind of applies for your boss and your secular rulers, but this does not apply for your pastor. And what they're going to say is that you never speak against your pastor, even if you know he's in sin, even if he's in sin and slandering you because you've confronted him about it. They would literally teach that you have the spirit of Absalom, you're a rebel, basically Satan's working through you to divide the church. When the Bible tells you that if a pastor is caught sinning and you have 2 or 3 witnesses, you are to rebuke him publicly in front of everybody. So the rest learn to fear and not follow in his bad behavior or bad doctrine. Okay, and that's what Paul does to Peter in front of everybody. Okay, so Paul's the one who is establishing this teaching. It's like when it is a teacher, when it is somebody with an authority and people look to them as an example, then they need to be publicly rebuked so that those other elders and the people who follow them learn to fear the Lord and not do what they're doing. Okay, it's not necessarily saying try to overthrow them, try to split the church, but they are to be brought to correction. And if they're not going to go under correction, you treat them like any other Christian. They don't have this special anointing where they get to stay the pastor no matter what. That's absurd. Okay. But they're going to develop this false teaching, and it's based on the idea because they're going to treat the pastor like a king. And this works out really well for pastors who are trying to basically get you to pay a tax to them, which is tithing, and fleece you for all your money. So it says, David, he says, let the Lord judge between me and you, as the proverb of the ancients, wickedness proceeds from the wicked, but my hand shall not be upon thee. So apparently this is an ancient proverb. Remember, we've got things like the book of Jasher. We've got things like Job floating around. There are other scriptures floating around. There's other ancient wise sayings floating around from godly men. One of them is wickedness proceeds from the wicked, but my hand shall not be upon thee. So this idea of not striking an authority, we find in many different places in the world. You find it in Confucianism, and it's pretty natural to the kind of godliness that would have been expected from those who proceeded from the Tower of Babel, because the idea of inheritance rights and the eldest son leading and patriarchy and just order in civilization was preferable to chaos, and the idea that God removes kings if they suck and they're wicked was kind of there. And you find this in China. They would call it the way of heaven. So the Chinese, I believe, are the Canaanites who went through Babylon and then eventually went around and up towards China. And that was probably before the Tower of Babel that they did this. So this kind of idea probably was around from Noah. So I would assume Noah through Shem had those kind of ideas. I would assume those ideas were once upon a time fluent throughout the Middle East, and that there were other writings that kept those kind of ideas. And so this idea of anti-sedition has been an idea of the righteous and the godly forever, which is why your Calvinists and your Protestants who are overthrowing governments and stuff like this are bad. They're just bad. They're twisting scripture to try to make it sound like the evil that they do is good, and it's not. So, after whom is the king of Israel come out? After whom does he pursue? After a dead dog, after fleeing. In other words, he's like, I'm nobody. Why do you feel like I'm a threat to you? The Lord therefore judge and between me and thee, and see and plead my cause, and deliver me out of thine hand. And it came to pass, when David had made an end of speaking these words to Saul, that Saul said, Is this thy voice, my son David? And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. So this is Saul. He's kind of like a bipolar drama queen. One minute he's like, oh, my son, in tears. I will never hunt you again. Until he has an opportunity to hunt him again. He's just going to keep doing this. And he said to David, Thou art more righteous than I, for thou hast rewarded me good where I has rewarded thee evil. And he's like, yeah, and you slaughtered the priesthood. That wasn't super awesome. And thou hast shown me this day that you have dealt kindly with me, for as much as the Lord has delivered me in thy hand, you killed me not. For if a man find his enemy, will he let him go away? Wherefore the Lord reward thee good for what thou hast done to me this day. And now behold, I know well that you shall surely be king, and the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. See, this is how, remember, Saul knows what's up. I want you to understand, Saul he's more of a flawed man. He's more of a double-minded man than he is outright evil. Okay? He does really evil things because he does evil things out of fear and, trying to protect his authority. And once he knows the Lord's turned on him, he's always feared the people. And once he knows the Lord's turned on him, this fear turns to a murderous fear because he feels threatened all the time. And the way things go with kings everywhere in the world is like when a king goes down, him and all his family get slaughtered. This is how it is. They say it's good to be the king, and it's good to be the king when you are the king, but not when you're not anymore. People don't just allow you to just chill in the cut and just be like, okay, now you're just going to be like a retired president. We'll have Secret Service on you, and you'll be fine. No, you're a threat to rise again to oppose the new power, and so they kill you and your family. They do this everywhere. And he's worried that David's going to do this. Why? Because of history. Because this is how this has gone down. I mean, the last guy they almost had king was this Ahimelech guy. And what did he do? He killed his 70 brothers to make sure none of them could threaten his power. And that was not that long before Saul. Okay? So David swore to Saul. He says, swear now before me that you will not cut off my seed after me, and that you will not destroy my name out of my father's house. See, this is what Saul's scared of. He knows the kingdom's taken away from him, and he now knows David is the guy who's going to be king. Samuel's never told him. He sees, as David is on the come up, that this guy is clearly the one who's going, because Samuel told him God chose somebody, and all of a sudden David shows up and is killing Goliath. And he's like, okay, that must be the guy. So David swore to Saul, and Saul went home, and David and his men gat up to the hold. So they're not about to be like, okay, let's have peace. We're going to be like, back to the fort, dudes. So I want you to think of these guys like a bunch of brigands with a fort, okay? They're going to earn their living probably by doing patrols, probably by raiding. And they're going to be, this period of time is probably going to be, I would say, at least a few years. So I would assume that David is probably in his mid to late 20s by this time. So Samuel died, and all the Israelites were gathered together and lamented him and buried him in his house in Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. So Samuel dies. David doesn't seem to go to the funeral. I would assume everybody's there, and Saul probably even honored him. So David can't go. And Ramah is not that far from Gibeah. He's not going to go that close. And he's probably going down to mourn in the wilderness of Paran. And the wilderness of Paran is down here. It's in this, if you see right here, this is kind of just outside of Judah's territory. But over here you're going to have, remember how the Lord dwelt in Paran? And this is going to be Paran over in this area. And then Sinai is going to be down here. So he's almost down by Sinai. But he goes there. What is he doing? He's probably mourning. It doesn't really say. And then David arose, went down the wilderness of Paran, and there was a man named Maon. So he's now dwelling in the wilderness south of Judah. And he says, and there's a man in Maon whose possessions were in Carmel. And the man was great, and he had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now, I want you to understand this. In this area where he is down here, this is where the Amalekites roam. They're going to roam from Shur, which I forget. I think Shur is like in one of these mountains right over here in Arabia, all the way over. Oh no, I'm sorry, the Shur Desert right here. So from here to Egypt, you're going to have the Amalekites running back and forth. Saul has taken out a lot of them, but they're not totally wiped out yet. There's still going to be a problem. And you're going to have David down here, because you're going to have these people going down around with their sheep herds and stuff like this to wander through these areas to pasture their sheep. And what David is doing is he's kind of setting his team up as a guard to kind of patrol the area and keep these shepherds safe. And there's probably some farms down there too that he's keeping safe. So what he's doing is he is kind of almost mafia style, where I'm going to protect your stuff, but I expect something for that. But think of him more like, I don't think they have horses or anything like that. Some of them might. But think of him more like, what's the guy on Lord of the Rings when he gets out with the king, and so he's going around killing orcs on the outskirts. So he's there and he's still doing good for the people, but he's on the outs with the king. That whole story is very much developed on David and his men. So I would assume they're not Rohirrim with all kinds of swords and army, but they're basically running patrols around here, and they're keeping it safe from Amalekites and potential raiders from the Arabs and stuff like that against their flocks. And the area where he is this, let's see, Maon right here. This is where this Nabal is, and he's probably got shepherds going down around here, and David's men are down around here keeping patrol. So he says, now the name of the man was Nabal, which means the fool, and his wife's name is Abigail, and I believe she is going to be, Daniel is going to come from her. It seems to be, and I'll show you that in a minute. So as it says, she was a woman of good understanding and a beautiful countenance, but the man was churlish, and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb. So he had no class, and he was just scandalous. He was a descendant of Caleb, and David heard in the wilderness that Nabal did shear his sheep. So he would take his sheep around, and then what he's going to do once a year is he's going to shear the sheep, sell the wool, and make some extra cash. Okay, he's going to probably have some farms in the States, and the sheep, because he's got 3,000 sheep, is going to yield him a good bunch of cash, because that's going to be the clothing supply for the next year for a bunch of people. And David sent out 10 young men, and David said to the young men, get you up to Carmel to go to Nabal and greet him in my name, and thus you will say to him that lived in prosperity, peace both to you and peace to your house and peace to all that you have. And now I have heard that you have shearers. Now thy shepherds which were with us, we hurt them not, neither was anything missing with them, all while they were in Carmel. So what he's doing is he's saying, while your people were in Carmel shearing their sheep, remember none of their sheep are getting taken, and they probably got a bunch of groups just going in different places and pasturing these people, and then they go up to Carmel, which is probably a more central marketplace, shears the sheep, and then somebody there is making wool and selling wool or selling wool garments. Okay, and he's saying, hey, I know you guys just got essentially your annual cash, and I want you to know that you guys have been safe and you've been doing very well, because my people have been helping protect your stuff out in the wilderness. So that includes, fighting off lions and bears and keeping them away, and then potential raiders and Amalekites and stuff like this. And he said, ask thy young men if they will show me, wherefore let the young men find favor in thy eyes, for we come in a good day. Give, I pray thee, whatever comes into your hand to thy servants and to thy son David. So he's saying, whatsoever cometh into thy hand. I don't know if he's saying, give us all the money. It kind of sounds like whatsoever comes in your hand, or whatever seems good to you. I think that's more what he's saying. Unto thy servants and to thy son David. And David's young men came, and they spoke to Nabal according to all these words in the name of David ceased. And Nabal answered David's servants and said, who is David, and who is the son of Jesse? There be many servants nowadays that break away every man from their master. So he's accusing him of being a rebel, and going out on his own and basically just being a bandit. Shall I then take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed for my shears and give it unto men whom I know not whence they be. In other words, I don't know where you come from. I don't know what your deal is. So David's young men turned their way and went again, and they came and told him all these sayings. And David said to his men, Gird ye every man up his sword. And they girded every man his sword, and David also girded his sword. And they went up after David, about 400 men, and 200 abode by the stuff. So in other words, 200 of them kept the baggage, the fort, wherever, and 400 men are about to go up there, and they're just going to take his stuff. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he railed at them. But the men were good to us, and we were not hurt, neither we missed anything, as long as we were conversant with them when we were in the field. So in other words, these guys were decent to us. They never took a thing. They're just asking for some tribute because they protected us. They were a wall to us both in the day and night, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. And therefore now, and consider what thou wilt do, for evil is determined against our master and against all his household. For such is the son of Belial, a man cannot speak to him. So he's a no good son of a Belial, son of a bee, and nobody can reason with this guy. Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 bottles of wine and 5 sheep ready dressed, ready to cook, and 5 measures of parched corn and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes and figs, and laid them on asses. She said to her servants, Go on before me. Behold, I come after you. But she told her husband, but she did not tell her husband Nabal. So they're loaded. They've got a staff of servants. They've got all kinds of food. They've got all kinds of flocks. They're doing very well. And it was so that she rode on the ass, and she came down by the covert on the hill, and behold, David and his men came down against her, and she met him. And David said, Surely in vain I have kept all that thy fellow hath in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed, and all that pertained to him, and he requited me evil for good. So and more shall God do to the enemies of David, if I leave all that pertained to him by morning light that pisseth against the wall. That means basically all the males are going to be dead. And Abigail saw David, and she hastened and lighted off her ass, fell before David on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and fell at his feet, and said, Upon me, my lord, and upon me let this iniquity be, and thine handmaid. And I pray thee, speak in thine audience, and hear the words of thy handmaid. So she's basically taking all the blame herself. She's saying, if I had known, I would have got some stuff for you, okay? Let me take the heat for this, and forgive me. Let not my lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal, for so his name is, Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. Remember, Nabal means fool. But I, thine handmaid, saw not the young men of my lord, whom thou didst send. Now therefore, my lord, as the Lord lives, and thy soul lives, seeing that the Lord has withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies, and they that seek evil to my lord, be as Nabal. So what he's saying, she's actually prophesying her own son's death. And I'm wondering if she has a little bit of prophetic gifting. But she says this. She's basically saying, since the Lord has prevented you from avenging yourself with your own hand. In other words, we don't want you to be seen as a brigand. You're going to be king one day. She's saying, let all your enemies be as Nabal. In other words, let Nabal get his and all your enemies. And now this blessing which thy handmaid has brought to my lord, let it be given unto the young men that follow my lord. So here, take all this food. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaid. She's taking all the blame herself. For the Lord will certainly make my lord a sure house, because my lord fights the battles of the Lord, and even has not been found in thee all thy days. And evil has not been found in thee all thy days. So she's like, I know you're a good guy. I know you're fighting for the Lord. I know the Lord is with you. Let me take the blame, take this food as a way of saying, I'm sorry I wasn't there, that I didn't give you guys food when you asked. Yet a man is risen to pursue thee and seek thy soul, but the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of life with thy Lord, and the souls of thine enemies, them shall he sling out as out of the middle of a sling. So remember, David's famous for killing a guy with a sling, and she's saying, you're going to chuck out your enemies like you are slinging a rock. And it shall come to pass, when the Lord shall have done to my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning thee, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Israel, that this shall be no grief unto thee, nor offense to the heart of my Lord, either that thou hast shed blood causeless, or that my Lord has avenged himself. But when the Lord shall have dealt well with my Lord, then remember thy handmaid. So I want you to hear what she's saying. She's being extremely wise here, but even almost prophetic. She's saying, You don't want to show up to be king and have this be on your conscience that you took vengeance in your own hand because you were stressed out about your needs, and basically thug lifed your way through getting what you needed from Judah. So take this. The Lord will have you be king one day, but remember me when it comes to that day, okay? So David said to Abigail, said, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, who has sent thee this day to meet me, and blessed be thy advice, and blessed be thou which hast kept me for this day from coming to shed blood and avenging myself with mine own hand. For in very deed, as the Lord God of Israel lives, which has kept me back from hurting thee, except thou did hasted to come unto me, surely there had not been left unto Nabal by the morning light anything that pisseth against the wall. I was going to kill every male. So David received of her hand that which she had brought him, and he said to her, Go up in peace to thine house, for I have hearkened thy voice, and have accepted thy person. And Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he held a feast in his house like the feast of a king, and Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was drunken. Wherefore she told him nothing less or more until the morning light. So she let it chill till the light. Remember, he just got done shearing his sheep. He made a good pile of money, and he had a feast, and he's having a good time, okay? So she's like, let's not spoil the parade right now. I'll tell him in the morning. So, but it came to pass in the morning, when the wine is gone out of Nabal, and his wife told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. So she told him what she did. David was going to kill all you guys. I got word of it, and I got him some food. Everything's cool, okay? But when he heard it, whether because he's a stubborn man or the Lord struck him, it sounds like he had a heart attack. And he's probably an older guy, and he's either infuriated or whatever it is. He seems to have a heart attack. And then it says it came to pass about 10 days after that the Lord smote Nabal, and he died. So he seems to have a heart attack right then and then die within 10 days. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed be the Lord, he has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and has kept his servant from evil, for the Lord has returned the wickedness of Nabal upon his own head. And David sent and communed with Abigail to take her for a wife. So notice she said, May it be to all thy enemies as to Nabal, you're going to chuck them out as a sling and a stone, right? Well, she kind of is prophesying the doom of her own husband. And her husband dies at her word. And this is why I think that she's a prophet. I think she's a prophetess. She's probably one of the unaccounted prophetesses, but don't tell any women, because every time you find one of them, they're like, and that's proof that women should be pastors, because people are stupid. Okay, but she seems to prophesy her own husband's death, and he seems to die at her word. Now, David is going to have this Abigail to be his wife. She's his first wife after Michal, and Michal gets given away to another guy. And David is going to have kids with her, and she's going to have this kid named Chileab. Okay, now remember, they're probably both descended from Caleb, and Chileab is a transliteration of Caleb. Okay, so because she's descended from the Calebites, she seems to have a son named Caleb, probably after the Caleb in their line, in David's line. So now you've got the line of Caleb and the line of David, which I forget. I think Caleb comes from Hezron, and maybe David comes from Ram, and they're brothers, I think, or they might both be from Hezron. But the point is you have the line of David and the line of Caleb now married. Okay, and that's a very strong line. I mean, the reason this guy is rich is probably because he's one of the leading firstborn, whatever, descendants of Caleb. This is now 400 years later. But the house of Caleb is one of the main houses in Israel. So it's one of the strong houses in Israel. And so he's now married into that house. And he's got this huge estate. Okay? And she has his son Caleb. And this is the only descendant it ever shows is this son named Caleb. But when you get into Chronicles and it records their descendants, remember Chronicles is now written after the captivity. What they're doing is they're writing these lines in terms of the house of the David for people that they knew of being in Judah and what happened to them after the captivity. And then these people coming back from the captivity are supposed to match up their genealogies to the records they have in Chronicles to have any part of the inheritance of the land. And Ezra is pretty much, Ezra and Nehemiah are pretty much over giving those land tracts away, and Ezra is basically placed in civil control of the land. So he's kind of like a governor. Okay, so so when they record this, what you're going to find is Boaz begot Obed, Obed begot Jesse, Jesse begot his firstborn Eliab, Aniab, Nethaneel, blah blah blah, whose sisters were Zariah and Abigail. So it looks like David has sisters named Abigail and Zariah, and this Abishai, this is a different Abigail. Abishai is going to be one of the young men who are with him, and Joab is going to be with him. So so those are going to be his nephews, and that's going to be his sister. But the Caleb of Hezron, it says Caleb Hezron begot children to Azubah his wife, and in chapter 3:1 it says sons of David were born to him in Hebron. The first was Amnon and Ahinoam of the Jezreelites. The second, Daniel of Abigail the Carmelitess. So I don't know if his name is Caleb and Daniel's like a second name for him, or if this is a way of saying that that line ends with Daniel. But she may be the forebear of Daniel. Now, I could be totally mistaken on that. That just could be a second name for him, or it could be they could be trying to point out that the line that ends with Daniel comes from him. Who knows? But they both seem to be known for being very wise, and they both seem to be prophetic, so there's a possibility there. Let's see here. So it says, when the servants of David were come to Abigail to Carmel, they spoke to her, saying, David sent us to thee to take thee to him to wife. So in other words, David's coming to pick you up to be his wife. Is he asking or telling? I don't know. And she arose and bowed herself to the face of the earth and said, Behold, let thine handmaid be a servant to wash the feet of the servants of the Lord. And Abigail hastened and arose and rode upon an ass with 5 damsels of hers that went with her. So these would typically be virgin accompanying servants, maybe. And she went after the messengers to David and became his wife. So David now has an estate. Remember, she's got servants to run this place. They don't need to hang out there. The point is they've got income streams, and they don't seem to want to hang out there because Saul will figure it out and besiege it, right? And so what she does is seems to leave her servants in charge of it, takes 5 servant girls to come with her, and basically stays with David now as his wife. She's having her servants run the place, and they're being able to draw on that for food and income as they need it, while David is basically an outlaw. So then it says David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they were both his wives. So this is probably going to happen again within a year or two of him leaving. Remember, he had Michal as his wife. Just this is probably going to be like a year or so earlier. But he gives her to this Phalti, the son of Laish, who was of Galim. Galim is going to be a city that is just like, let's see here, just a few miles south of, you see Geba and Gibeah right here in Galim. This is going to be an area of Benjamin, so he's probably trying to strengthen up his local ties, and he gives his daughter to somebody else. Remember, the first daughter was supposed to go to David, and he screws him out of that. And then the second daughter was David's wife, and he gives her away to somebody else after she's David's wife. David did not put her away. He fled for his life. So David's going to come back and get his wife. And this guy should have known that this was David's wife, and he shouldn't have married her, but he's probably looking at opportunity and not really thinking about the big picture. So the other one is going to be this Jezreelitis. And Jezreel is, if you see up here, here's the Sea of Galilee. Remember, David's down here chilling in the cut around the sea. You got En-Gedi down here. You've got Paran down here, the wilderness of Paran, and all this area is down here on the south side of the mountains. But he's able to go around the mountains without having to go through. And now he's up in here, Jezreel, which is going to be, there's going to be rivers that flow down to the Jordan. There's going to be that. And the Jezreel Valley, typically you're going to have people who are going to be descendants of Issachar and Manasseh and stuff like that. It just says she's a Jezreelitess, which means she's probably from this area. She might be a Manassite, doesn't really say. But I would assume it's a Manassite because David seems to have good relationships with the people, the Manassites of Gilead. And my guess would be, so you're going to have this half-tribe of Manasseh, and those Gileadites are going to be situated over here, but probably married in with people over here. David is probably syncing up with one of the next most militant tribes. So your strongest, most militant tribes are going to be the Manassites, the Ephraimites, the Benjamites, and the Judites. But the strongest two are the Manassites and the Judites. So David is probably being strategic here. I don't think he's just picking up some woman. But this woman is going to have a son that's going to rape his sister. So she might just be a woman that was easy to get at. If it runs in the family. That's all I'm saying. But anyways, now David's got 2 wives with him. Comfort women. And he is doing his raiding and pillaging thing, and he's just kind of chilling around in south of Judah, but now he's got an estate, so he's got some firm income, so he doesn't need to guard people's stuff to hope for some tribute for doing so. Now he is a little bit more secure in him and his 600 men because somebody's got 3,000 sheep. That's 5 sheep per man. That's a start. And he's probably got farms and all kinds of stuff beyond that, and so his men at least got food supply, and of course some of these men are his relations in Judah, and they can skedaddle to their home turf and get fed and clothed and sheltered and whatnot. So he's in a lot better position now. But then the Ziphites, who, if you remember, these Ziphites are right up here. David's estate is down here in Maon, and he's probably got herds down here, and he's probably still guarding the herds and stuff like that. But now they're his herds. You see these Ziphites know about this because Carmel's right up the road from there. And they're like, David's still among us. Maybe they don't know that Nabal has died and he's married her wife. But I would assume word's gotten around that Nabal has died. Maybe not that David's her wife. Maybe, she's keeping the estate by herself and minding her own business, and who knows. But they're like, Saul, you're going to get David? And of course Saul said, I'm not going to go after David until somebody says, are you going to get David? And he fears the people, so he's going to go get David. So then Saul arose, he doesn't want to look weak, and he's going to go down to the wilderness of Ziph, having 3,000 chosen men of Israel with him to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. We're going to try this again. Haven't you tried this before? Saul pitched in the hill of Hakilah, which is before Jeshimon on the way, but David abode in the wilderness and saw Saul come after him into the wilderness. David therefore sent out spies and understood that Saul was come in very deed. And David arose and came to the place where Saul had pitched, and David beheld the place where Saul lay, and Abner the son of Ner, that's his uncle, the captain of the host, and Saul lay in the trench, and the people pitched around him. Then answered David to Ahimelech the Hittite, and Abishai the son of Zeruiah, brother of Job. So remember, Zeruiah is his sister. Job and Abishai are his descendants. Job is going to be the head of his army, and he is super sketch. Abishai is going to be a mighty man, and he's going to be a giant killer. So these guys are beast mode. Ahimelech, we don't know who this is. Maybe he's related to Uriah the Hittite. We don't know, but he's one of his mighty men too. We'll read about these guys later. Who will go down with me to Saul in the camp? And Abishai says, I will go down with thee. Abishai's a beast. He's going to do mighty man deeds. And David and Abishai came to the people by night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping within the trench, and his spear stuck in the ground at his bolster, and Abner and the people lay around him. So they're camping out, sleeping out in the night. And Abishai said to David, God has delivered my enemy into thy hand this day. Now therefore let me smite him. This is his nephew. I pray thee with the spear, even to the earth at once, and I will not smite a second time. And David said to Abishai, destroy him not, for who can stretch forth his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? David said, furthermore, as the Lord lives, the Lord shall smite him, or his days shall come to die, or he shall descend in battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed, but I pray thee, take thou the spear that is at his bolster and the cruse of water, and let's go. Let's grab his stuff and go. Just trust me, dude. I know how to handle this. So David took the spear and the cruse of water from Saul's bolster, so he has like a jug of water or whatever, and they gat them away, and no man saw it and knew it, neither wakened, because they were ninjas, and for they were all asleep, because the deep sleep from the Lord had fallen upon them. So apparently, they are supernaturally slumbering, like the Lord is for David's plan, because he knows David's not out to hurt him. He's out to just shame him. And then David went over to the other side and stood on the top of a hill, far off, a great space being between them. And David cried to the people and to Abner the son of Ner, saying, Answer thou not, Abner? He's like, got nothing to say, Abner? Then Abner answered and said, Who art thou that criest against the king? See, what he's doing is he's shaming Abner, because David's like, I was your right-hand man. I was your armor bearer. Now you've got this Abner as your armor bearer. And listen to what he says to Abner. Art thou a valiant man? In other words, are you a brave man? And who is like thee in Israel? Wherefore then how hast thou not kept thy lord the king? In other words, you didn't have these problems now as your armor bearer, Saul. For there came one of the people to destroy the king thy lord. Remember, Abishai wanted to kill him. This thing is not good that thou hast done, and the Lord, as the Lord lives, you are worthy to die, because you have not kept your master, the Lord's anointed. And now see where the king's spear is, and the cruse of water that was at his bolster. And Saul knew David's voice and says, Is this the voice of my son David? And David says, It is my voice, my lord, O king. And he said, Wherefore doth my lord pursue after his servant? For what have I done, or what evil is in mine hand? Now therefore I pray thee, let the Lord the king hear the words of his servant. If the Lord have stirred thee up against me, let him accept an offering. But if they be the children of men, cursed they be before the Lord. In other words, if the Lord has stirred you up to be against me, then let me make a sacrifice to make up for it. But if it's men, let them be cursed. For they have driven me out this day from abiding in the inheritance of the Lord, saying, Go serve other gods. Wow. And he's killed the priest even. He's still saying this. Now therefore, let not my blood fall to the earth before the face of the Lord, for the king of Israel is come out to seek a flea, as one does hunt a partridge in the mountains. Then said Saul, I have sinned, return my son David, for I will no more do thee harm. Now he's trying to get David to come home with him. Yeah, okay, we've been down this road, Saul. Because my soul was precious in thine eyes this day, behold, I have played the fool and have erred exceedingly. And David answered, Behold the king's spear, and let one of the young men come over and fetch it. And Lord, render to every man his righteousness and his faithfulness. For the Lord delivered thee into my hand this day, but I would not stretch out mine hand against the Lord's anointed. So he's twice said, I could have killed you, but I didn't. And behold, as thy life was much set by this day in mine eyes, so let my life be much set in the eyes of my Lord, and let him deliver me out of all tribulation. Then Saul said to David, Blessed be thou, my son David, thou shalt do great things and shalt still prevail. And David went on his way, and Saul returned to his place. So Saul talked a bunch of bluster again. Oh, I love you, my son. Yes, okay. And David's like, yeah, we've heard this line before. Okay, be on your way. And David said in his heart, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me that I should speedily escape into the hand of the Philistines. And Saul shall despair of me to seek me no more on the coast of Israel. I shall escape out of his hand. So Saul's been hunting him. He's killed the priesthood over him. He has been out to Judah to try to get him twice with an army. Okay? He's not taking chances anymore. He's like, you know what? I'm not taking chances anymore. He's going to come out here and get my estate. I'm going to go somewhere away from the state. And he said, David arose and passed over with the 600 men that were with him to Achish, the son of Maok, the king of Gath. So remember, at first it was just him playing crazy in front of Achish. Now he's got his 600 men with him. And David dwelt with Achish in Gath, he and his men, every man in his household, even David with his 2 wives, and Ahinoam the Jezreelite, and Abigail the Carmelitess, Nabal's wife. Okay? So now what he is doing is he's going to act like he is basically seeking out that guy's interest like he was seeking out Nabal's interest. In other words, I'll keep your flocks and herds safe. I'll raid the people who are around about the way, including people from Judah, because they hate me now. And it was told to Saul that David had fled to Gath, and he sought him no more for him. And David said to Achish, If I have found grace in thine eyes, let them give me a place in some town in the country, that I may dwell there. For why should thy servant dwell in the royal city with thee? In other words, Gath is kind of like a local capital. There's small towns all around. He's like, just give me one of the small towns for me and my men, and we'll serve you. I shouldn't be dwelling in the royal city. After all, I'm not even a Philistine. So then Achish gave him Ziklag that day, wherefore Ziklag pertaineth to the kings in Judah unto this day. Pertains to the kings of Judah unto this day. So Ziklag, let's see here. So remember how Beersheba is kind of the furthest south? There's Beersheba and here's Ziklag, okay? Up here, if you remember, there's the cave of Adullam where he started out. This guy's up in Gash. So he's kind of in the plains of the Philistines here, but he's kind of on their border now too. And this is kind of border between the border of what Judah controls and what the Philistines control. Beersheba would be that main city. There's probably a decent, I would assume, garrison there. And David can act like he is raiding Judah when he's really going far out, because how would Gath know way over here? So he says, at that time David dwelt in the country of the Philistines a full year and 4 months. So he's already been, remember, Saul's been back and forth to war with the Philistines, and I would assume you're probably, I would assume 3 years out, two to 3 years out, if not more, from David's initial departing from Saul. So I would assume he's probably like 20, maybe 28 now, 29 maybe. And he says, David and his men went up and invaded the Geshurites. Now, the Geshurites, he's going to make peace with them, it seems like, afterwards, and marry the king of Geshur's daughter. But he's raiding and invading them. The Gezrites, which is going to be a city that's down around here. Let's see if I get Gezrite. Gezer is right here. So Gath is right here. And then the third one is going to be the Amalekites. So what David is doing is he's going around. Remember, the Philistines kind of pull weight in this territory right here. So he's going around here. Geshur is over here. Remember, he's married to someone over here. So he's probably got relatives in this area. And so he's definitely not going to mess with the Manassites or the Judites, because he's married in with both of them now. But this Geshur is a foreign city of Arameans here. The Gezer is probably a leftover Canaanite city, so he's raiding them. He's raiding the Geshurites, and then the Amalekites are all down here in the south, so he's raiding them. And after this war is over, after Saul is dead, he is going to make peace with Geshur and marry a Geshurite daughter, and that's how Absalom's going to be born. So right now, he is basically taking his opportunity to go on a pretty wide stretch of patrol to get away from actually attacking people from Israel and be far enough away where he wouldn't know who he's really going after, because they're not Philistines, they're not Israelites, and they're far away from Gath. The closest one is going to be this Gezer, which is, you see Gath up here, and Gezer is, I mean, you're probably looking at 10 miles away from Gath, and they're not related. These are going to be Philistine cities, and that's going to be kind of the end of their former territories. They're going to go up here to make war, but that's not really their territory up here. This Ekron, Timnah, and all this, if you remember, Samson was down here, and this is kind of the border of the Philistines' land, is this river right here. So he's going outside of their territory where nobody can come back and be like, hey, did you know David's not attacking Israelites, he's attacking us? What have we to do with thee? They would say to them. So it says, for those nations, it doesn't say nations where, it says, in other words, the Amalekites, of old were the inhabitants of the land that goes even to Shur, even unto the land of Egypt. So remember, all the way to the borders of Egypt, the Amalekites are going to dwell, and up to about the Goshen area. So if you were to look at here's the Shur Desert. This is going to be the south of the Judah's mountains. All the way over to Egypt here is going to be where the Amalekites dwell. So that's who he's raiding, and it's all outside of Philistine territory, and who would know the better, who he's killing. And David smote the land and left neither man or woman alive, so whenever they raided a farm or whatever, they'd kill everyone. And so they couldn't report on it, and took away the sheep and the oxen and the asses and the camels and the apparel, and returned and came to Achish. So he's still fighting the enemies of Israel. He's still clearing the land of these non-Canaanites that he's not supposed to, while acting like he's serving this king of Gath and fighting the Israelites. And Achish said, "Whether have you made road today?" And David would say, "Against the south of Judah, or against the south of the Jerahmeelites, or against the south of the Kenites." So the Kenites, remember, those are Moses' relatives. The Jerahmeelites, I think they're up in Issachar. Let me see here. Okay, so apparently Jerahmeel is up in the Moan area where he's from, so he's probably heading over there to visit to get stock, and he's making it sound like he's going on raids over there. So they probably don't realize he's got a wife from there, and he's going to get stuff from there, and they're thinking he's taking raids, and he's actually just taking his own stuff. So he's being pretty clever here about the way that he's doing it. He's making sure there's no witnesses. Nobody can really know what he's doing. The Kenites, of course, they're going to be dwelling. I think they dwell among the Amalekites, because Saul tells them to skedaddle before he kills the Amalekites. So they seem to, remember, these are Midianites, they're Arabs, and they seem to get along okay with the Canaanites and with the Amalekites and with the Israelites. They seem to be kind of a Switzerland here. So he's saying he's going up against them. Remember, these would be Moses' in-laws' descendants. But he's actually going up against the Amalekites. He's saying he's going up against Judah and the Jerahmeelites, but he's actually probably just going to his own home turf and getting food from Abigail's place. And then David saved neither man or woman alive to bring tidings to Gath, lest they should tell on us, saying, "So did David, and he would be, and so will be his manner while he dwells in the country of the Philistines." Because if they found out David was killing other people and not killing Judahites, they are not going to trust David. And Achish believed David, saying, "He has made his people utterly abhor him, therefore he shall be my servant forever." So he's thinking, this guy's seriously on the outs with Israel. We can trust him. And it came to pass in those days that the Philistines gathered their armies together for warfare to fight with Israel. And Achish said to David, "Know thou assuredly that thou shalt go out with me to battle, and thou and thy men." So remember, David really runs more of a raiding party. In the beginning with Saul, he was fighting in battles with Saul, but then Saul didn't like him, and he put him away to like more of a raiding party that's going to go around and the area and raiding for him, and he's hoping he's going to get killed by the Philistines, and he doesn't. Now his raiding party is getting really good at raiding. They haven't really fought in a straight up battle in a while, but they clearly they know how to fight. So he's like, let's bring these guys into battle with us. So David said to Achish, "Surely thou shalt know what thy servant can do." And Achish said to David, "Therefore I will make thee keeper of mine head forever." So in other words, Achish is basically saying, I'm going to make you my commander, my number one. So David is in tight with Achish, and that's why once David becomes king, he is going to annex this city from the Philistines right off the bat. He doesn't wipe out the Philistines, but he subdues them, and he annexes this guy's territory, and then he's going to take this guy's commander and make him one of his commanders. So he seems to have divisions of his army, and one of them is a Philistine division. Now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had lamented him and buried him in Ramah, even in his own city. And Saul had put away those that had familiar spirits and wizards out of the land. So Saul is actually doing good stuff. Samuel is dead, and because Samuel is dead, Saul has no one to inquire of. This is going to be their next big battle against the Philistine. Now, before when we went to fight the Philistines, that was probably more of a raid. This is a full-on let's fight, okay? There's a difference. Typically, they're going to raid, and then when these guys come, their army's coming, okay, let's take a bunch of stuff and leave. And then their army comes, and maybe they try to attack some of our cities, but they're going to go to their fortified cities, and no one's trying to necessarily besiege each other because that is very costly. But now they're, every now and again, like I said, they rebuild their forces after the previous battles, and then they say, let's go toe-to-toe, let's do this. And so they're calling each other out, and Samuel, last time they've probably been called out like this was back in the day when David was with him. David killing Goliath and stuff like that. It's been a minute because they have kicked their butts pretty good, and the Philistines have mostly sent out raiding parties probably for the last decade. And now they've built up their forces again. Now they have a whole bunch of young men who are now army size, and let's do this again. And Saul doesn't know how it's going to go down. He doesn't have Samuel to ask about what to do, how it's supposed to go down. He knows God is not for him. He doesn't have David with him, who is kind of a hero, and he's trying to kill him. And he had been faithful to God in getting rid of any wizards or familiar spirits out of the land. And the Philistines gathered themselves together and pitched in Shunem, and Saul gathered Israel together, and they pitched in Gilboa. So Shunem and Gilboa, let's see. So if you look right here, this is Shunem up here. That's where the Philistines are, and this is where the Israelites are. So this would be where they would come down into the mountains here. There's Jezreel, where David's got away from. And they would probably fight down here in the valley. And if I'm not mistaken, this would be the same valley that you would have like Armageddon and stuff like that in. This is a nice flat plain. So if you're going to have just a straight up, let's do this. You see Mount Gilboa, and there's Shunem here. Here's Megiddo over here. This valley right here, I think Napoleon went here, and he said, like, this is like the most perfect place for a battle. Because wherever you're coming from, you've got people who can come from here, people who come from here. It's like you have mountains up here where you can pitch and eyeball each other, and you can just straight up, like, let's do this down here. And it's a pass you got to kind of control, and if you control it with a good army, well, you kind of control the flow of trade all through the region, because you can kind of block them from going up into the mountains, because these riverbeds are not really good roads, not for much at least. The bigger, better roads are going to be right down through here. This is the King's Highway, goes like up and around Galilee and all that. So Saul's down here, they're down here, they're in danger of having Israel cut in two, basically. And Saul's got to fight. We got to do this. We got to go toe-to-toe here. And they were going to call out David to fight, and David's kind of on the spot. And so he's just like, all right, I swore fealty to this guy. I guess we're going to fight. And he says, when Saul saw the host of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart greatly trembled. And when Saul inquired of the Lord answered him not, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by prophets. So there are still prophets up in the region. Remember, David was chilling with a bunch of prophets with Samuel for a minute. But they ain't got nothing to say to Saul because he killed the priesthood. Urim, maybe he's got somebody else he installed in the priesthood and they're kind of a puppet. But he ain't got nothing to say either because Saul killed the priesthood. And nope, I'm sorry, but nobody is going to... Let me send you some dreams, Saul. You killed the priesthood and my anointed. You've been hunting down. No, Saul, we're done. And so Saul said to his servants, seek a woman that has a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her. In other words, I got to get some supernatural guidance here. Let's try the devil. And his servant said to him, behold, there's a woman that has a familiar spirit at Endor. Now, a familiar spirit, and this is the belief that I am leaning towards with familiar spirits, okay? So if you go to the Hebrew, he's getting rid of the wizards. This is a conjurer, so a conjurer, the Aub. It just says a mumbler. So this is basically somebody who's kind of demonized, who has a spirit whispering in her ear, it seems like. So this person who has an Aub, a familiar spirit, is probably a shade. And the two words you have for devils are shades and fawns. And what shades and fawns seem to be is the departed spirits of Nephilim. That seems to be what they are. because human spirits go down to Sheol when they die, and there's nothing really said what happens to Nephilim spirits. And the Jews kind of believe this. It's a conjecture. It's not something we have some sure scripture that says this. But what a shade is a departed, it's supposed to be a ghost. It's the departed person. And since we know regular people go to Sheol, what other beings could have departed spirits? So it seems to be like there is a difference between the wicked angels who still go back and forth to heaven and these fallen spirits who are here on earth but don't go to Sheol when they die. They do seem to be Nephilim. So it says a woman has a familiar spirit at Endor, where the Ewoks live. So he's going to go to the planet of Endor and talk to this lady. And Saul disguised himself and put on other raiment, and he went and 2 men with him, and they came to the woman by night and said, I pray thee, divine to me by the familiar spirit, and bring him up, whom I shall name thee. And the woman said to him, Behold, thou knowest what Saul has done, how he has cut off those who have familiar spirits and wizards out of the land, because the law says that. This is a death penalty. Wherefore, why then dost thou lay a snare for my life and cause me to die? And Saul sware to her by the Lord, saying, As the Lord lived, there shall be no punishment happen to thee for this thing. Then said the woman, Who should I bring up to thee? And he said, Bring me up Samuel. And when the woman saw Samuel, in other words, I'm usually dealing with demons that are impersonating people who are dying, who have died. That's what familiar spirits do. So when you hear these mediums, and a lot of them are just doing trickery, and it's kind of like a card trick where they lead you towards the card they want you to find, but it seems like you're deciding on your own. I've played those card trick people, and I've watched it work on other people and not work on me. And the reason is because I just tend not to be open to suggestion much. I tend to be like, no, I'm not going to do what you want. Why would you want me to do that? But it's like that. A lot of them are like that, but other ones are really have familiar spirits with them, and these spirits are whispering things into their ear that their dead relatives might know. They're not actually seeing their dead relatives and talking to them. They're getting tips from demons on things that their dead relatives might know, because these demons, these shades, hang around. Okay? And she sees actual Samuel. Now, Samuel's well known. He's been known in Israel. He's, from his childhood to he was probably close to 100 when he died. So he's a very well-known guy in the region right where they are. He's a known prophet, known man of God. Everybody knows who Samuel is. He's the kingmaker. And she sees him come up from the dead. This is a one-time thing. You don't ever have this unless you count like a guy like Lazarus rising from the dead. You don't ever have this. You have people rise from the dead, but you don't ever have a ghost of a departed person come up. You have a belief among the Jews in the Second Temple period that a person's ghost hangs around their body for 4 days, up to 4 days after they die, and then it goes down to Sheol. So you do have that belief, but the idea of being able to bring somebody up from Sheol is not heard of. It's a demonic lie. And so when this woman sees it actually happen, and she sees him, she cries with a loud voice, and the woman spoke to Saul, saying, Why have you deceived me, for you are Saul? When she sees that this is really Samuel, and this is not just some guy she's conning, she knows that this is Saul. And the king said unto her, Be not afraid, what sawest thou? And the woman said to Saul, I saw gods ascending out of the earth. Gods. Now let's see what this word is. I saw Elohim. So this would be something where you, Michael Heiserites, might be like, what does he mean here by gods? Well, this is where I'm going to agree with him, where Elohim is a kind of being to them. So spiritual beings, like angels, they would consider Elohim, gods, okay? There's no definite article here. It's just Elohim. And so even though Elohim is a plural word, it can be referring to a kind, like a Nephilim. That's a plural word too, but a Nephilim is one Nephilim. Okay? Whenever you see im at the end, it can be it's like ite. It's like an Israelite. Okay? So a Nephilim is like saying one of the Nephilim. This word can mean a god, or a spiritual being, or if it's obviously got the definite article, Hal Elohim, the gods, or it could be God. It could be the Father, the Spirit, and the Son represented. So contextually, she's saying, I saw one of the spiritual beings ascend up out of the earth. In other words, I don't normally see this. She's freaking out. And he said to her, what is the form of? And she said, an old man comes up and he is covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel. And he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed himself. And Samuel said to Saul. So this is where, again, this book is written. It's a compilation that was written. The first part was written by Samuel, probably up into the point where David is picked, is written by Samuel. From the point of the next part is probably starts with the David and Goliath story, and I'm not sure where it ends, but I would assume because we have Gad talking later on in his life, but we don't have Nathan introduced for a while, so I would assume the last part is Nathan. The middle part seems to be Gad the seer. And it could be Gad the seer and Nathan together are just right in the middle in the last part of 1st and 2nd Samuel. But the second part I would assume is Gad the seer. So he is a prophet, and this prophet is saying this is Samuel speaking to Saul from the grave. And he says, why have you disquieted me to bring me up? And Saul said, I am sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God has departed from me and answers me no more, neither by prophets nor by dreams. Therefore I have called thee that thou makest known to me what I should do. Now remember, he killed the prophets, or he killed the priesthood before Samuel died. Samuel's like, maybe you shouldn't have killed the priesthood. That wasn't smooth. And Samuel said, wherefore dost thou ask me of this thing, seeing that the Lord has departed from thee and has become thine enemy? Now I know some people, I have good friends who would disagree with me on this. They think, well, Saul never asked to be king, and I think he's in heaven. Well, God has become his enemy. I'm going to say withhold judgment on that at best, okay? It usually doesn't go good for suicides in the Bible. Usually doesn't go good for suicides in general. And Samuel is saying God's become his enemy. So he's not just rejected him from being king. He's now become his enemy. Why? He's killed the priesthood. He's killed the priesthood. He's been hunting David. He's said multiple times he wouldn't do it, as the Lord lives, and he's backed down on it. He is a thoroughly wicked dude by this time. He keeps getting worse. And now he is going to witches to get advice. Okay? So if you know of anybody who goes down this kind of road and ends up in heaven, you can pretty much say you can do anything and go to heaven. So let's not make that call, okay? So you go from being God's anointed king and winning his battles to trying to spear David, trying to spear your son, murdering an innocent priesthood, and he does other stuff, like we're going to find out in 2 Samuel, like he went after the people of Gibeah, where Joshua swore an oath to them that they would put him to servitude but wouldn't kill him. And Saul goes after him and starts killing him. So he is just doing bad all over the place. But the close of your life is, okay, a year or so ago I killed 85 people, men, women, and children of the priesthood. And also I am now relying on witchcraft. Not many people go down this road, then commit suicide the next day, and go to heaven. So I'm going to say probably not in heaven. I know the Lord sent an evil spirit to him, but that could be because he's hardened his heart against the Lord. Maybe he never wanted to be king. Maybe he never counted himself worthy of being king. But maybe it's just a matter of faith. Maybe you're in your role, and that's your role, and you need to have faith that God's put you there and rely on God no matter what that role is. Because there are people who are born to kings, and now you're a king, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's not like, no, I'll just be a regular citizen. It's like, no, you're going to be a king. So I don't think people, just because they're in a pressured situation because of their lot in life, have the right to do all this evil and expect to go to heaven because they didn't want to. So I would assume Saul is on his way to hell. And he said, let's see, Samuel said, why are you asking me? And the Lord has done to him as he spoke by me, for the Lord has rent the kingdom out of thy hand and give it to thy neighbor. even to David. Because you obeyed not the voice of the Lord, nor executed his fierce wrath on Amalek. So he said he rejected you way back then. Okay? You're like an Adam. You didn't obey the voice of the Lord, you obeyed the voice of your wife. You didn't obey the voice of the Lord, you obeyed the voice of your people. You didn't obey the voice of the person over you in authority, you obeyed the voice of the person under you in authority. And she obeyed the voice of a serpent. You see how this is all going down to Satan? This is why you obey the person who's over you in authority, and this is why any kind of Christian ideology that justifies sedition is of the devil. Okay? The New Testament could not be more clear about this, which means your American Revolution, your Calvinists, your Lutheran overthrows, all this stuff is wicked in the eyes of the Lord. Okay? He does not justify this, which is why these people end up Nazis and stuff. And yes, it's coming to a theater near you. We are not for sedition. We honor the authority above. The only time we disobey them, civilly disobey them and suffer the consequences, it was when they try to get us to do things that the Lord forbids. So I'm not going to go murder somebody for my government. Okay? He didn't execute the wrath on Amalek, therefore the Lord has done this thing this day. Moreover, the Lord will also deliver Israel into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow thou and thy sons shall be with me. The Lord will deliver the host of Israel to the hands of the Philistines. So where is he? He just was pulled up from Sheol. Okay? So we don't necessarily know that Saul will be with him. Is he in Abraham's bosom? I would assume yes. But he's came up from Sheol. We don't have Abraham's bosom described anywhere in the Bible yet. Jesus is the one who tells them that this exists. Okay, what Abraham's bosom is a place for people who die in faith. They're considered a child of Abraham. And if you understand the word for Abraham's bosom, the word is a kolpos. Okay, and what a kolpos is if you've ever seen like a mother carrying around this thing where it's almost like a strap that goes around her and it holds the baby close to her heart. That's what a kolpos is. And he's saying you're in Abraham's kolpos. So imagine Abraham is like you're one of Abraham's baby children and you're close to Abraham. Well, why would you be in that lot? Because you're a descendant of Israel? No, because you died in faith. You're a child of faith awaiting the death and resurrection of Jesus to be let out into heaven, okay? And Jesus reveals to us that there's a chasm between people who just die not in faith and people who die in faith. And so it's like you're all in jail, but you kind of have, the white-collar criminals on one side, if you will, and the thuggish, ruggish, bone people in the other side, in Supermax. And chasm in between them because that's the bottomless pit, and that's where the angels who are chained up for really wicked deeds are. So all we know is he's going to Sheol because there's nothing about Sheol revealed until Jesus that we know of. There's nothing. You have some stuff in the book of Enoch that talks about there being a bunch of different chasms, but it disagrees with what Jesus says, so we throw that out. That probably came from paganism. We don't have anything in the Bible whatsoever to describe anything about designated spaces in Sheol up until Christ. So he says, Saul fell straightway all along the earth and was sore afraid because of the words of Samuel. And there was no strength in him, for he had not eaten bread all the day and all the night. So he's telling you, Israel's going to lose to the Philistines tomorrow, and your sons are going to be dead, and you're going to be joining me in Sheol. Jonathan's probably going to hang out with with Samuel. Saul, probably not so much. He just, again, I will not have a problem if Saul's in heaven. I would prefer almost everybody to be in heaven. I prefer everybody to be in heaven. I take that back. I would, if the whole world ended up universalist and everybody was just like, you know what, God straightened you out in the end and got you to cry uncle and now you're in heaven, I'd be okay with that. But based on what I know of God and his character and how things go for people, Saul seems to be on his way to hell. So he says, Saul fell straightway to the earth, and then the woman came to Saul, and she saw that this was sore troubled, and said to him, Behold, thine handmaid has obeyed thy voice. I have put my life in thy hand. I have hearkened unto thy words, which thou spakest unto me. Therefore I pray thee, hearken to my voice of thine handmaid, and let me set a morsel of bread before thee, and eat, that thou may have strength, and when thou go away. Okay? Remember, this is the night before the battle. He's on Mount Gilboa, and he's like, I'm going to go consult a witch. But he refused and said, I will not eat. But his servants, together with a woman, compelled him, and he hearkened to their voice, and he rose from the earth and sat on the bed. And the woman had a fat calf in the house. She hastened and killed it, and took the flour and kneaded it, and made unleavened bread thereof. She brought it before Saul and his servants, and they did eat, and they rose up and went away that night. So the witch is now feeding them. And the Philistines were gathered together, all the armies to Aphek, and the Israelites pitched by the fountain, which is in Jezreel. I don't know where Aphek is. There's Gilboa, there's Shanuim. I would assume they're around here. Jezreel Valley, I would assume. And it says, the Lord of the Philistines passed on by hundreds and by thousands, but David and his men passed by in the rearward with Achish. So David is lined up with the Philistines, but he's in the back. Then said the princes of the Philistines, what do these Hebrews do here? And Achish said unto the princes of the Philistines, is this not David, the servant of Saul, the king of Israel, which has been with me these days, these years? And I have found no fault with him unto this day. So David is with him for a few years. So if he's 30 when he we're going to assume he's been with him at least 2 years. If he's 30 when he's crowned king, this is not going to be that long after this. And you go back, he's got to be 4 or 5 years on the run. So he's probably like 25 when he goes out, maybe 26. And between the time he's been running from Saul and these years he's been serving from Ziklag, you're probably looking at 4 or 5 years of this. And he said, and I have found no fault with him since the day he fell to me to this day. The princes of the Philistines were wroth with him. And the princes of the Philistines said to him, make this fellow return, that he may go to his place where you have appointed him, and let him not go down to the battle to us, lest in the battle he be an adversary with us. For wherewith should he reconcile himself to his master, should it not be with the heads of this men? Now remember, the Philistines have had this happen before. That's what they had happen in the days of Saul. Saul's only been ruling for like 20 years, so this just happened like 20 years ago. Probably max, maybe less, maybe like 15, 18. That they had a bunch of Israelites serving them because they were over the Israelites, and those Israelites turned from them and joined Saul. Okay? And so he's like, how do you think he's going to try to get back on the ends with Saul? By killing you guys. Don't do it. Is this not David, of whom they sang to one another in their dances? Saul slew his thousands and David his tens of thousands. So no, we're not. No. So Achish called David and said to him, surely as the Lord lives, thou hast been upright in thy going out and thy coming in with me, and the host is good in my sight. For I have not found evil in thee since the day of thy coming, and to this day. Nevertheless, the Lord's favour thee not. Wherefore now return and go in peace, that thou displease not the lords of the Philistines. And David said unto Achish, but what have I done? Why hast thou found in thy servant so long as I have been with thee to this day, that I might now go fight against the enemies of my lord my king? So David is being loyal. If he's pressed to it, he would fight the Israelites here. But the Lord is probably causing this to deliver him from having to. And Achish answered and said to David, I know that thou art good in my sight as an angel of God, notwithstanding the princes of the Philistines have said, he shall not go up with us to battle. Wherefore now rise up early in the morning with thy master's servants that are come with thee, and as soon as thou art up early in the morning and have light, depart. So David and his men rose up early to depart in the morning and returned to the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Jezreel. So David is now, remember, he's all the way up here. He's all the way up here, almost to the Sea of Galilee area. And so Jezreel, and he's going to go all the way back down to Ziklag. So you're talking a good, probably 40, 50 mile trip, because you're going around everything. And by the time he gets there, there's trouble brewing at Ziklag. He has been away from his hometown, and while he was living here, he's been raiding Amalekites down south of here. And so guess what? Now he's way up north of there, and the Amalekites are going to come get some paybacks. And so it says, and when it came to pass, and his men had come to Ziklag on the third day, so it took them 3 days to get there, because they're going like 20 miles a day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south in Ziklag and smitten Ziklag and burned it with fire. So they're coming against the south of Judah. They might even be coming against the Philistines because the Philistines are all up here north to war. This is what Amalekites do. That's all they do for a living is raid and pillage. That's that thug life to them. And had taken the women captives and that were therein, and they slew not any, either great nor small, but carried them away and went on their way. So they're just taking them all as slaves. And because they've been having lots of killings, lots of them have been killed between Saul and David over the years, they're probably trying to replenish their numbers. So they're probably trying to keep these young men as servants, maybe give them to their daughters, and definitely keep the women for themselves to breed with. Not just trying to kill. Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voices and wept until they had no more power to weep. And David's 2 wives were taken captive, Ahinoam the Jezreelite and Abigail the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his son and his daughter. But David encouraged him as the Lord is God. So they're like, this following David thing sucks. He's got us fighting for the Philistines. Our wives just got taken. Let's just stone this dude and be done with it and go back to Saul. They've had it. This is a lot. Remember, they've been doing this for years, and David hasn't let them down yet, but now all their crap got taken because they were up 3 days' journey away fighting for the Philistines, or lined up to fight for the Philistines, every last man, when normally when they would go out raiding, they would leave like a third of them back to guard the stuff. And now they're like, and because of David's loyalty to this Philistine, our wives are gone. And they think they're dead. They just think they're gone. David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, I pray thee bring hither the ephod. And Abiathar brought hither the ephod to David. And David inquired of the Lord, saying, should I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered, pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. Okay? So this is when David is in a trial and is in a test. He doesn't know what the Lord's doing, but the Lord has his back. The Lord assured that he's not fighting Saul's armies right now. He's coming back to rescue his wives and kids. His men don't see what the Lord's doing, but he and the future high priest do. Okay? So David went, he and the 600 men that were with him, and they came to the brook Bezor, where they left behind, where those that were left behind stayed. And David pursued, he and 400 men, and 200 men abode behind, which were so faint that they could not go over the brook of Bezor. And they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David and gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water. Now, there's this rumor that the Amalekites are the Hyksos, who invaded Egypt and took over Egypt after the Israelites left. That's even on that Pattern of Evidence movie that I saw, but I don't know why they do what they do there, because the Hyksos, they know where they dwelt, and they dwelt in Amaris, and that's where the Hebrews dwelt. It's right smack dab in the middle of Goshen. And the city of Ramses, which is what the Hebrews would have originally built, and then it was later called Ramses, is right on top of Avaris. So the Hyksos are the Hebrews, and you have people who believe that the Hyksos are the Amalekites, and the reason is because Egyptologists are messing up the timeline of the Bible because they're just anti-biblical. Their biases are anti-biblical. And they won't admit the obvious evidence that the Bible updates cities later on. Okay, so you're going to have Dan updated later on, possibly Hebron updated later on. Certainly places like Bethlehem, Judah is going to be updated later on. And you're going to find books that are talking about a history way back before, but later on, as late as the Second Temple period, before the canon is closed, they're calling those cities by a more modern name so people know where they are, where they're pointing to. So those kinds of edits and updates did happen. It doesn't mean it's not divinely inspired, because you're giving geography and you're pointing to things that are real so people can understand it. And if that city has changed names 3 times, like, I would want to know, yeah, this is New York now, not New Amsterdam. Because when people are like, well, where's New Amsterdam? Well, where do the Dutch have a colony, right? Like, you need to know the city is New York now. So if you said New Amsterdam, nobody knows what you're talking about. But if you said New York, everybody knows what you're talking about. Okay, so we're going to update it. So they find an Egyptian field. Anyways, one of the reasons these guys believe the Amalekites invaded Egypt and were the Hyksos is because this guy has an Egyptian slave. That's very scant evidence. The Hyksos are the Hebrews, in my opinion. The dates match perfectly when the days that the Israelites were there and not slaves, if you do a Bible chronology and if you just look at the secular consensus on them. So anyway, they gave the Egyptian slave bread, and they said they gave him cakes of figs and clusters of raisins. When he had eaten, his spirit came again into him, for he had eaten no bread or drunk any water 3 days and 3 nights. And David said to him, to whom belongest thou, and whence art thou? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite, and my master left me because 3 days agone I fell sick. So remember, they're stealing people. Amalekites raid, and they're probably raiding Egypt too, but they're certainly not taking over Egypt. They just don't have the numbers and the power. Egypt, even after Israel is out of there, has rebuilt. This is 500 years later. They're fine, okay? So it says, we made an invasion upon the south of the Cherethites and upon the coast that belongs to Judah and upon the south of Caleb, and we burnt Ziklag with fire. So I don't know where the Cherethites are. I know it mentions them in Chronicles. So they don't seem to be obvious locations where they are. But obviously we know where Ziklag is. That's David's city. Caleb would be Hebron. So they raided Hebron. And where belongs to Judah. And he's basically, okay, these are the guys. He was with the guys who raided us. And David said, can thou bring me to this company? He said, swear to me by God that you'll neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will bring you down to the company. And when he had brought him down, behold, they were spread abroad on the earth, eating and drinking and dancing, because of the great spoil that they had taken out of the hands of the Philistines and out of the land of Judah. And David smote them from twilight even to the evening the next day, and there escaped not a man, save 400 young men, which rode on camels and fled. So the Amalekites are getting steadily wiped out. Okay, I think the Jews fought them a little bit in the taking of the Promised Land. Saul has killed most of them. What remains is more like a troop like David's got, and now they're down to 400 of them. So they have been kicking the crap out of these Amalekites, and they're almost completely gone. And the last 400 that are there, they got on camels and they fled, and they're probably hiding and living among the Arabs from then on out. We know that a son of Agag seems to be involved in the Esther scenario, so you don't really hear about the Amalekites much after this. In fact, in the next chapter, the Amalekite that reports that Saul's dead seems to be the last Amalekite mentioned in Scripture. If we look at this, we've got 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel 1 and 1 Samuel 4, and he and they smote the rest of the Amalekites that were escaped and dwelt there unto this day. So the last of the Amalekites, those 400, seem to get beat by Simeon. Remember how Simeon has territory in the south, and Ziklag is going to be right in the center of Simeon's territory. So it looks like the Simeonites wipe out the last of the Amalekites after this. So there's not a lot of them. There's 400 of them left. Remember how Benjamin was down to 600 men at one point. Okay, you can rebuild, but they just keep going at them until these Amalekites are gone. They do not like them. So they had a great spoil. They had taken out of the land of the Philistines and Judah. They did raid them both. And he said he smote them all day long till there were 400 left, and he recovered everything, including his 2 wives. There was nothing lacking to them, neither small or great, neither sons nor daughters, nor spoil, nor anything that they had taken from them. David recovered it all. So they did not lose a single person or any stuff. They probably made off with some more stuff because the Amalekites had raided Hebron and also Philistine territory as well. And David's going to give stuff to the Judahites who are raided to secure more loyalty to himself, but probably keep the Philistine stuff. So they're actually coming out ahead here. That's kind of nice. And David took all the flocks and herds which they drave before the other cattle and said, this is David's spoil. And David came to the 200 men, and they were so faint that they could not follow David, whom they had made also abide by the brook Besor. And they went forth to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. And David came near to all the people, and he saluted them. Now, I see the Lord's hand in all this, and here's why. Saul is going to die today. And what the Lord seems to be doing is also, because remember Ziklag's burned with fire now, And also now they've got a bunch of stuff that came from the Philistines. So what you're doing is you're forcing David to leave Ziklag. And where is he going to go? Well, he has to go away from the Philistines, which means he's going to go up into Hebron or somewhere else. Okay, and that's what he's going to do. And it just so happens he's getting back a bunch of stuff that was just stolen from the people of Hebron, probably including people and slaves and stuff too. So he has now just ingratiated himself to the people of Hebron. Okay, and God orchestrated all this. Saul's dead in one day. He's now could potentially a stench to the Philistines because they leave him behind and all of a sudden their cities are raided. The people who did it are dead, so he can't just easily say, well, that was the Amalekites and I got them. Here's your stuff. And he's getting back probably people and goods for the people of Hebron and sending them gifts. Now he's just secured favor for himself among the Judites in a big way. So it says, then they answered all the wicked men, these men of Belial that went with David, said, David came to the 200 men who were so faint they could not follow. Remember, these guys had they'd just been on a 3-day nonstop march. And then they went to go chase these people, and some of these guys were like, I can't go on any further, I'm too tired. So it said, those who couldn't follow him were at the brook Bezor, and when they went to meet David to meet the people that were with him, David came near, and he saluted them. Then answered the wicked men and the men of Belial and those who went with David and said, because they went not with us, we will not give them aught of the spoil we had recovered, save every man his wife and children, that they may lead them away and depart. In other words, the guys who didn't go with them, they can have their wife and kids back, but we're keeping all their stuff, and they can skedaddle. Okay? Remember, all these people following David are not necessarily good people. A lot of these people are just thug life, and they're just on the outs with Saul, and they're at it for themselves. Remember, these people were just about to stone David just a minute ago. They're not necessarily good people. This is a band of thugs. Then said David, you shall not do so, my brethren, with that which is the Lord has given us, who has preserved us and delivered the company that came against us into our hand. In other words, you guys have all made more money than you lost. For who will hearken unto you in this matter? But as his part is that goes down to the battle, so shall his part be that tarrieth by the stuff. They shall part alike. This is how we always do this. We always leave a third of the guys back with the stuff, and we split it evenly. Why? We need people to guard the stuff, so we don't get raided from behind. So we're going to treat it just like always. And it was so from that day forward that he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel unto this day. Pay attention to this. He's going to be going out all around Israel to attack all their surrounding enemies after this when he's king. And this is where he establishes as a rule for the army. We're going to leave a third of the army behind to make sure nobody messes with Israel. And the spoils of the war get split up with the military that goes out and the military that stays in and guards everybody. Okay? It's not just going to be the guys that go out that get the stuff, and there's probably some kind of system, so it's not always the same guys going out. And David came to Ziklag, and he sent of the spoil of the elders of Judah, even to his friends, saying, behold, a present of you of the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. So I would assume, again, if they've got his women and children, they probably have other people's women and children too. They probably have Philistine women and children, because they raided them too. And they probably had women and children from Hebron, because they raided Caleb too. So he's giving them back their women and children that were taken, because a lot of those people probably have sent their armies off with King Saul, and they probably didn't have the numbers they needed. They probably have among them now some Philistine servants. Maybe he's sending them back. Who knows? And then it says, here's who he's sending stuff to. Bethel. Those were in South Ramoth. Those were in Eror. Those were in Shipmoth. Those were in Eshtemoa, Rakal, to the Jeremielites. And those who were the Kenites, remember Moses' in-laws. Those were in Hormah, those were in Chorasham, and those were in Athkath, and to them which were in Hebron. Hebron is kind of the capital of Judah, if you will, at this time. And the places where David himself and his men were wont to haunt. Okay? So everywhere that his men hung out, he said, here, have some spoils. They probably let the people go back to their families, and then they just spread the wealth around all throughout Judah. Here, have some wealth. And he has just basically secured some very good favor all around the heartland of Judah. That was smart. Because Saul's going to die the next day. Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines and fell down in Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines followed hard upon Saul and his sons, and the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Melchishua, Saul's sons. Saul has 4 sons and a couple of daughters. He loses 3 out of 4 sons here. The battle went sore against Saul, and the archers hit him. He was sore wounded because of the archers. And then Saul said to his armor bearer, "Draw thy sword and thrust me through therewith, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and abuse me." But his armor bearer would not, for he was sore afraid. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell on it. And when his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he likewise fell on his sword and died with him. I'm not going to be the guy who let the king die. I'm going to die too for honor. So Saul died, and his 3 sons and his armor bearer and all his men that same day together. So remember, he's going to have his main men who are with him, is probably like a few thousand men, and the rest are going to be from the other tribes of Judah, and they're going to all skedaddle, leaving just him and his men because they're getting their butts kicked. And all of Saul's men, his main troops, die. So Saul's team is dead. The rest of the army is scattered. And when the men of Israel saw that they were on the other side of the valley and that they were on the other side of the Jordan, saw that the men of Israel fled and Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook the cities and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them. So in other words, all these people from what we would consider part of the northern kingdom of Israel, so Issachar, Zebulun, and these guys right here that were in this region, they skedaddle and they go to the other side and forsook their cities, probably went in the mountains and stuff like this. And the Philistines just camped out in their cities. So the Philistines just got all these cities right here. And probably everything between them down here to Philistia. They pretty much have all this now. They don't have the mountains, but they have all this. And you're going to find a civil war go on between Judah and Israel up in the mountains, but the Philistines have all this. And they're going to hold it until David's king again and gathers them all together against the Philistines. So the Philistines pretty much have all the green turf, all the good farmland, all the lowlands, all the good trade cities, all the good trade routes, and the kingdom of Israel is mostly reduced to these mountain clans again and people on the other side of the Jordan. It's not good for them. It's like back in the days of Judges. This sucks for us. We have failed. Our king was a wash. What's happening? And it came to pass on the morrow that the Philistines came to strip the slain. They found Saul and his 3 sons fallen in Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head, stripped off his armor, and sent into the land of the Philistines round about to publish it in the house of their idols and among the people. And they put his armor in the house of Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. So the house of Ashtaroth, let's see where they are, Bethshan. So they could have another idol to Ashtaroth here. They could have another, idol to Ashtaroth, or they could have taken all the way up to here, which they may have, all the way up to the city of Ashtaroth. They may have taken this side of the river too. It's not really clear, but this is where they hang his body. And you're going to have people from Jabesh Gilead go on a nighttime raid, and get his body and come and bury it safely, because that's their king, and nobody treats their king that way, even if he did suck. So it says, when all the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard of the things that Philistines did to Saul, all the valiant men arose. They went by night. They took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Bethshan and came to Jabesh and burnt them there. They took their bones and buried them in the tree of Jabesh and fasted 7 days. Why? We kind of feel like a punk. We were losing the battle, and we all skedaddled, and our king is dead. Yeah, it's not supposed to go down like that. But this is how it would go down. They're more of a confederacy than a united, really rigid, organized army. It's more like the king's got his main royal guard, if you will, which is going to be his thousands that he keeps with him, but it's just a few thousand men, and everybody else is kind of like volunteers, like state militias, if you will. And if the battle's not going their way, they're going to be like, every man to your tents, let's be out. And that's it. And that's why the Philistines are going to pull weight, because the Philistines are more organized. These are guys who've been a military garrison people for Egypt in Canaan for centuries. They know what they're doing. They've got good weapons. They've got pretty equal weapons by this time, but the Philistines are tactically, they're better. So they can't easily take them in the mountains necessarily, because you can't use war tactics as well there, but you get them in the lowlands, and without God's help and God's favor, they're toast. So we're in 2 Samuel now. It says, "Now it came to pass after the death of Saul, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, and David abode 2 days in Ziklag." So it says, "It came to pass on the third day, that behold, a man came out of the camp from Saul with his clothes rent and earth upon his head, and so it was that he came to David and fell on the earth and did obeisance." Now this guy probably thinks he's going to secure some favor with David. Doesn't go so well. David said to him, "From whence comest thou?" And he said unto him, "Out of the camp of Israel I am escaped." And David said unto him, "How went the matter, I pray thee?" And he answered, "That the people are fled in battle, and many of the people that are fallen are dead, and Saul and Jonathan his son are dead also." Now, I want you to understand David's constant MO. He's not just doing this because he's godly. I mean, this is his primary motivator. But David is being transparent that he was never disloyal to Saul, even if Saul hated him. Okay? Why? David was married to Saul's daughter. If Saul's sons are dead, then David is naturally in line for the throne. Okay? So David is, even if Saul feels threatened by David, that's why he's making it really obvious in front of Saul's men, who are now all dead, but in front of Saul's men, that David could have killed Saul, but he didn't. David is for Saul, not against Saul. Okay? Now Saul's dead. And Jonathan, he genuinely loved Jonathan. And David said to the young men that told him, "How knowest thou that Saul and Jonathan his son are dead?" And the young man said to him, "As I happened and chanced on Mount Gilboa, behold, Saul leaned on his spear, and lo, the chariots and the horsemen I heard followed hard after him." So remember, he fell on his sword. You literally fall on your sword. You put your sword on the ground and you fall down on top of it. That's how you kill yourself. It's not a pleasant way to die. And when he looked behind him, he saw me, and he called unto me, and I answered and said, "Here I am." And he said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm an Amalekite." Amalekites, man. He said to me again, "Stand, I pray thee, upon thee, and slay me, for the anguish has come upon me, because my life is yet whole in me." In other words, I stabbed myself through with a sword. He might even be paralyzed. Might have got part of his spine or whatever. He's like, and I'm still completely alive. This sucks really bad. And so he said, "I stood upon him and I slew him, because I was sure that he could not live after that he was fallen. And I took the crown that was upon his head and the bracelet that was on his arm, and I brought them thither to my Lord." So I took essentially the signs of his kingship and brought them to you. Then David took his clothes and tore them, and likewise all the men that were with him. They mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and for Jonathan his son, and for the people of the Lord, and for the house of Israel, because they were fallen by the sword. We just got our butts kicked by the Philistines. And David said to the young men that were with them, "Whence thou?" In other words, where did you come from? And he answered, "I am the son of a stranger, an Amalekite." And David said to him, "How was you not afraid to stretch out your hand against the Lord's anointed?" And David called one of the young men and said, "Go near and fall upon him." And he smote him, and he died. Then David said to him, "Thy blood be upon thy head, for thy mouth has testified against thee, saying, I have slain the Lord's anointed." And David lamented with this lamentation over Saul and over Jonathan his son. And he bade them teach the children of Judah to use the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher. So this is the last mention of the book of Jasher. Whatever this book was, the book of the righteous, it apparently is still being kept in David's day. Now, I don't know what the book of Jasher is. Maybe this is the book of Jasher. Maybe the whole Bible is the book of Jasher. Maybe the book of Jasher is an entirely different book, but it's been subordinated by the biblical records, and so there's no need to hang on to it. But the book of Jasher is mentioned in Moses' day, but it literally might be a generic term for the collection of the scriptures. However, whenever they use "behold, it is written," it's usually referencing a book other than what you have here. So that makes it seem like somebody else has been writing some other historical narrative. And I'm not really sure. We don't know. There is a Book of Jasher that came out of the Middle Ages. We have no reason to believe that's the original or like the original. We have no idea what's in the Book of Jasher except for a couple things that it says here. And guess what? Those things aren't in the Book of Jasher. Book of Jasher is like a retelling of Genesis and I think maybe Genesis and Exodus. I think it's just Genesis. I haven't read it in a while. Anyway, here's the song that he's writing in it. And I think just the thing about teaching the children the use of the bow, I don't know if this song is in there, but anyways, the beauty of Israel is slain upon the high places, how the mighty have fallen. Tell it not in Gath, publish it not in the streets of Ascalon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised triumph. Ye mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew, let there neither be rain on your upon you, or on your fields, or on your offerings, for the shield of the mighty was vilely cast away, the shield of Saul, as though he had not been anointed with oil. So he's kind of rebuking everybody who fled from Saul. Okay? He's cursing the mountain that he died upon. For the mighty is vilely cast away, the shield of Saul, as though he had not been anointed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan turned not back, and the sword of Saul returned not empty. Saul and Jonathan were lovely and pleasant in their lives, and in their death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. Ye daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, ye clothed in scarlet with other delights, who put on ornaments of gold upon your apparel. In other words, Saul's the reason you guys are rich. How the mighty are fallen in the midst of battle, O Jonathan, thou wast slain in thine high places. I am distressed for thee, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant hast thou been unto thee. Thy love to me was more wonderful, passing the love of women. How mighty are the fallen, the weapons of war pierced. And your LGBTQ crowd is going to have a field day with this one. But he's literally like, I love you more than my wives. Why? Because we're like, you're my brother. And this is bros before the lady friends. Okay? This is just how it was back then. He's writing a song to honor them. He genuinely does love Jonathan, and he's even loyal to Saul, even though Saul's a tool. But he's honoring them before all of Israel, and he's making sure everybody knows he's honoring the fallen king. Why? He's naturally next in line for the throne. Now, there's going to be a younger son of Saul who's still alive. He was so young he couldn't go to battle, and David is married to a daughter who's probably older than him. But David is much older, and he's a warrior, and the son is basically a young prince. He's not anybody. And Abner, Saul's uncle, is going to basically kind of rule as a dictator with this guy as a puppet king to try to hold on to the kingdom for a minute. And that's not cool. So it said, it came to pass after this that David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go up to any of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said to him, go up. And David said, whether shall I go up? And he said, to Hebron. So he's like, go up to Hebron. Remember, he just sent a bunch of money and gifts all throughout the land surrounding Hebron. And David went up thither, and his wives also, Ahinoam the Jezreelite, the Abigail, Nabal's wife, and the Carmelite, and the men that were with him. David just bring up every man with his household, and they dwelt in the cities of Hebron. So Hebron is a region, but there's a city called Hebron that's a capital. Okay? So remember, David has a state in Maon, whatever, down here. Hebron's up here, okay? He is now dwelling in kind of the capital of Judah at this time, because Bethlehem is a northern city. Jerusalem he has not taken yet, which is going to be the capital of all of Israel, but that's technically in Benjamite territory. The reason David is justified to take it is because he is the legitimate heir of King Saul. He is his son-in-law, okay? So he's going to have an estate down here. Him and his 600 men are living in and around here. They're doing good now. They've got a lot of loot. They have got probably servants and stuff from all over the place. Probably not tons of servants, but they've got servants with them. He's got servants keeping his estate down here. He's doing pretty good, and now he's got favor with all these people. He's honoring the king that died, and he's kind of now becoming a tribal chief of the people of Hebron. And so the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying that the men at Jabesh Gilead, about the men at Jabesh Gilead that buried Saul. So they know about this. Remember, they're all still a united kingdom, but what they are doing is they're saying, we're making Saul's dead. Saul's dead, and his sons are dead. You're our king. You're the king of Judah. They don't have all Israel on their side yet, but they're saying, we're making you king in Judah. They're ready to break away from the rest of Israel right now. We got to remember, they're a big tribe. So they're a big tribe, and they've got a nice setup in the mountains here. So David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead and said to them, Blessed be ye of the Lord, how you have showed kindness to the Lord, even to Saul, and have buried him. And now, Lord, show kindness and truth to you, so I will also requite this kindness, because you have done this thing. So remember, David has a wife who's up in the Manassites. He's the legitimate heir of Saul. He's now king of Judah, and he's got a wife who is a descendant of Caleb. So it says, Therefore now let your hands be strengthened, and be ye valiant, for your master Saul is dead, and also the house of Judah have anointed me king over them. But Abner the son of Ner, captain of Saul's host, took Ishbosheth the son of Saul, and brought him over to Manaheim. So Ishbosheth was obviously too young to go to war. He's probably a teenager. And David is now 30, and he is a thug life. He has now a whole tribe on his side. And you probably have Judah, again, because these guys have cities and estates and all this stuff now, and people who need to manage and work this stuff, they're not going to field the same kind of numbers they would when they were just a bunch of people in the wilderness and every last person was part of the army. But I would expect that the Judites can easily field. Actually, I think when he counts them, I think they can field like up to 300,000 people. They're big. They're not. I mean, it's Judah and Benjamin, I think. But it's a big troop. They can field a pretty substantial army, and they could go at it alone and just be their own thing. They've got to the south. They've got grazing lands and farmlands. They've got a mountainous fortified area. They're good. Israel's going to be much stronger if they stay together, so they want to stay together. Abner knows this, and Abner's like, nope, I've got the legitimate heir to Saul's kingdom here. I'm going to pull weight and kind of put him on the throne and be the power behind the throne, and he's really just going to control everything. And so it says, Abner, the son of Ner, the captain of Saul's hold, took Ishbosheth and made him king over Gilead, over the Asherites, over Jezreel, over Ephraim, over Benjamin, and over all Israel. So Gilead is just on the other side of the river. Notice you don't have, you're going to find less and less being mentioned about the Reubenites and the Gadites. They're over there, but Gilead is usually the term because that's the immediate other side of the Jordan. Gilead is kind of the term for the people on the other side of the Jordan now. Jezreel is kind of the term for the lowland south of, it's basically Manasseh, south of Ephraim. The Asherites are going to be the people up. Remember, their territory is up around Tyre and Sidon. So it's going to be that whole northern coastland area. And Ephraim is going to be the mountainous areas north of Benjamin and overall Israel. So those are the main territories, essentially. So you essentially have a split almost exactly like the split between northern and southern Israel all ready to go right now. And this is why it's going to be a sinful thing when David is going to take a census and he's going to compare the troop sizes between northern and southern Israel, because what he's looking at is the possibility of a civil war and if he could win. And that's why the Lord gets ticked at him for doing that. So it says Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when, he's 40. So he's 40 years old, but he's not in the army. That's kind of weird. I don't know why. So if Saul, Saul's got to be in his 60s when he goes and dies. Jonathan's his oldest, so Jonathan has to be probably in his mid-40s. So I would assume that Saul's in his mid to late 60s. Jonathan is in his mid to late 40s, and this younger brother's 40 years old, and for some reason he's not one of them to go to war. Maybe he's just not the warrior type. I don't know. See if we can find out anything about him. So everything you know about Ishbosheth is going to be in these 2 chapters where there's a civil war going on here. And he says, so Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he began to reign over Israel, and he reigned 2 years, but the house of Judah followed David. So he's only going to reign for 2 years. At the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah, and the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. So I think this is the time until he captures Jerusalem. And so the civil war is going to go on for 2 years until he dies. And Abner the son of Ner and the servants of Ishbosheth the son of Saul went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon. And Joab the son of Zeruiah the servant of David went out and met together in the pool of Gibeon. And they sat down, one on the one side of the pool, one on the other side of the pool. And Abner said to Joab, so they're this is kind of like a parlay, if you will. And Abner says to Joab, let the young men now arise and play before us. And Joab said, let them arise. In other words, let's see who's got the better guys there. And then they arose and went over by number of Benjamin, who pertained to Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and 12 of the servants of David. And they caught each one by the head and thrust the sword in his fellow's side. So they fell down together, where the place was called Helkath-Azurim, which is in Gibeon. So what is in Helkath-Azurim? Smoothness of the rocks. I don't know what that means. But essentially, what they're going to do is some kind of... It seems like what they're going to try to do is like a limited, almost like an honor combat, like what they were doing with David and Goliath. Your 12 best guys against our 12 best guys, and they all killed each other, and they just all died. So it didn't really work out so well. And it says, and there was a very sore battle that day, and Abner was beaten and all the men of Israel before the servants of David. So essentially, when this honor killing ended up a draw, it basically, they're like, okay, let's fight. And they go to fight, and Abner was beaten by the men of David. And there arose the 3 sons of Zeruiah there, Joab, Abishai, and Azael. Remember, these are all brothers of, these are essentially all David's cousins, okay? And Asahel was as light in the foot and a wild roe. Now, he has to be the younger one because these guys have been with David, and he's the young one, okay? But he's quick because he's young. He's spry. And Asahel pursued after Abner. So remember, Abner is a old school dude. This is Saul's uncle, which means he could be Saul's age. But he's an older dude, but he's been a warrior his whole life, okay? So this guy might be like 60, 70 years old. He's Saul's uncle. But he's never not been at war, and this is probably a teenager pursuing him, okay? And Asahel pursued after him. He turned not to the left or the right from following Abner. He's stalking him. I'm going to get you. And he's just like, looked behind him. He said, are you Asahel? And he knows who he is because he knows David. These guys used to roll together under Saul. And Abner said to him, turn thee aside by the right hand and the left, and lay thee not hold of one of the young men, and take thee his armor. And lay thee hold of one of the young men, and take his armor. But Asahel would not turn aside from following him. So one of the things you would do in battle, and this is in other words, he's not armored, okay? He's saying, go get one of these guys' armor and count it as a gain, essentially, okay? So the guys who are fighting who don't have armor cost money. It's expensive. So if you find a guy with armor, you take his armor. You're either going to sell that or use that, okay? That's money, right? So he's like, count your blessings. Just go get some armor, young man. Quit chasing me. But Asahel would not turn aside from following him. And Abner said again to Asahel, turn thee aside from following me. Why should I smite you to the ground? How then would I hold up my face to Joab thy brother? In other words, he knows who Joab is. He's Saul's number one, and Joab's David's number one in terms of their military commander, okay? I'm not trying to kill his little brother. Howbeit he refused to turn aside, where Abner, with the hinder part of the end of the spear, smote him under the 5th rib. Now listen to this. With the hinder end of the spear, the blunt end of a spear. This is how strong this guy is. He smote him under the 5th rib. That's very specific. And the spear came out from behind him, and he fell down there and died in the same place. In other words, this kid's chasing him, and he hits him with the back of the spear, not the pointy part. And it goes through him. Yeah, I've been stabbing for many years, kid. This is what it's like when you're a warrior and you've been at this for a while. You just get stronger and stronger and stronger. This guy has been huffing it in mountains with armor on and stabbing for probably decades of his life. At least as long as Saul's been king, probably if not before that. Okay, he's the commander of his army for a reason, and he's got this teenager running up on him because he's quick and he can't outrun this kid. And he's like, I'm not trying to kill you. And he's probably not trying to kill him. He's probably just that beast mode. But he is stacked. Like, I go to the gym. I am not in great shape for my age. I was in much better shape in my 30s. But I see guys there who are in their 60s who've just been hitting the gym regular their whole life. And these guys look like they could pick me up and tear me in two. Like, there are people there that are just so diesel because they've just been lifting and lifting and lifting for years. Well, think of a guy like this, except he's not just lifting weight. He's using it to stab people. It's like that, okay? So, he's probably not trying to kill him, which is why he hit him with the blunt end of his spear. He's probably just trying to knock the wind out of him, honestly. And he probably just goes too hard and takes him out. So he says, Spirit came out behind him. He fell down there and died in the same place. And it came to pass that as many as came to that place where Asahel fell down and died stood still. Joab also and Abishai pursued after Abner, and the sun went down until they come to the hill of Ammah that lieth at Giah and the way of the wilderness of Gibeon. And the children of Benjamin gathered themselves together after Abner and became one troop and stood on top of the hill. And Abner called to Joab and said, Shall the sword devour forever? Knowest thou not that it will be bitterness in the latter end? How long shall it be then ere you bid the people from return to following their brethren? In other words, do you really want a full-blown civil war over this? They were going to have like a gang fight, basically, to see who's going to rule. And he's like, if you keep coming after me, this could be a full-blown civil war. And Joab said, As God lives, unless thou hast spoken, surely in the morning... Then in the morning the people had gone up every one from following his brother. So Joab blew the trumpet, and all the people stood still and pursued after Israel no more, neither they fought anymore. Joab doesn't know this guy killed his little brother. Other people have seen him. Joab has not. And Abner, so he's basically saying, okay, you want to call it quits? Okay, let's call it quits. So Joab blew a trumpet, and all the people stood still and pursued after Israel no more, neither fought they any more. And Abner and his men walked all that night through the plain, passed over the Jordan, went through Bithron, and came to Mahanaim. So this guy's got Saul's son on the other side of the Jordan River, which means he's probably, remember that it was the guys from Gilead that got Saul's body down, which means they probably have some loyalty here. He's not doing well. They're on the decline. Remember, most of Saul's personal bodyguard were probably killed in this battle, and Abner only has his most loyal men, Saul's most loyal men, and these are probably relations, probably all Benjamites for the most part. And what you have here is him trying to hold on to the legal authority of Saul's crown, apart from the fact that God publicly rejected Saul. But that public rejection of Saul wasn't made publicly known. Samuel knew it. Saul knew it. But the people did not know God has rejected you and anointed David. The only one who really seems to know this is Samuel and Saul and David, and probably David's family now. Okay? It's not like it's this thing that was done in front of everybody. Otherwise, you might have had war way back then. So they don't have a lot of people, but they have, in the eyes of Israel, the legitimacy for the throne. Now it says, Joab returned after following Abner, and when he had gathered all the people together, there lacked David's servants 19 men and Asahel. In other words, these are the people who never came back. But the servants of David had smitten Benjamin and Abner's men, so that 360 men died. So again, this is a tight number. Remember, David has 600 men. They just killed 360 of Saul's men. Now Saul had a few thousand, but he's lost a bunch of them in this battle. And they probably don't have a big troop left. These are probably the core of Saul's kinsmen from Benjamin. And they've killed 360 of them. Who David has in his legitimate entourage versus the gathered army, they're probably roughly similar at this point. And they took up Asahel and buried him in the sepulchre of his father, which was in Bethlehem. Remember, this is David's nephew. And Joab and his men went that night, and they came to Hebron in the break of the day. So they find out after they called off the hunt on Abner, he killed our little brother. And Joab is going to be a problem for David. Abner is going to be a problem too. But Joab is going to be a problem for David throughout his whole career. And at the end of his life, he's going to tell Solomon, you need to kill that Joab dude. We'll get into him later, but this is going to be the first instance of this, okay? Now there was a long war between the house of David, the house of Saul, and the house of David. Remember, he's ruling for 2 years. But David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul waxed weaker and weaker. And unto David were born sons in Hebron. The first was Amnon of Ahinoam the Jezreelitess. The second, Chileab of Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. The third, Absalom, the son of Maacah of Talmai of Geshur. So when they saying his house grew stronger, this is how it is. This is how these tribal peoples do. He has now married into this Aramean king of Geshur, who lives among Geshur is close to Gilead. So let's see here. This is where the half tribe of Manasseh is, and Sea of Galilee, and this is Geshur right over here. So it's a city, but it's got like a surrounding turf, and these are people. Like I said, if you remember how the Gileadites and the sons of Machir are married in with the Arameans. Well, Geshur is one of those Aramean kingdoms that they probably were married in with. So that's why they're still dwelling among them. And that's where Absalom comes from. And so then he says the fourth is Adonijah the son of Haggith. The fifth, Sheptiah the son of Abital. So assume that these are political marriages with people among the tribes of Israel. We don't know exactly who. The sixth, Ithream by Eglah, David's wife. So these were born to David in Hebron. So David has 6 wives. He's going to have a 7th in Michal. And then he's going to kind of divorce Michal, but not allow her to marry anyone else. That's why she's going to be barren. And then Bathsheba is going to replace her as the 7th. So David always has like 7 wives. He's got other concubines, but he says, so... And Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Ai, and Ishbosheth said to Abner, wherefore hast thou gone into my father's concubine? So this is a big deal. Remember, later on, Absalom is going to go into David's concubines. That means sleep with them. And that's kind of acting like I've inherited what is his. Okay? A concubine is considered property. It's not necessarily a servant, but it is a woman that you take care of and sleep with. And it's not a wife. So she's more like a servant than a wife. And somebody's concubine is considered, well, who does this person belong to? Or who's responsible for her care if you die? And the answer is your heir. Okay? So your heir might have your concubines and not sleep with them, but might have them. And sometimes you're going to have a girl, like you're going to have this little girl who is basically a young virgin girl who sleeps in David's bed to keep him warm before he dies. He doesn't sleep with her, but she just lays next to him to keep him warm. And one of his brothers is going to try to get that girl. And he's like, no. She's like a servant girl, basically. And he's like, no. He realizes this is, you're symbolically doing something here that is not cool. And Abner does that. He's sleeping with one of Saul's side chicks. And Ishbosheth knows what this is about. But Abner was very wroth at the words of Ishbosheth. And he says, am I a dog's head against which Judah do show kindness this day to the house of Saul, your father, to his brother, and to his friends, that have not delivered thee to the hand of David, that thou charged me this day with fault concerning this woman? In other words, I could have handed you over to David, and I'm keeping you alive, and you're going to get on my case about this? So do God to Abner and more also, except that the Lord has sworn to David, even so I do to him, to translate the kingdom of the house of Saul and set up the house of David forever and over Judah from Dan to Beersheba. In other words, keep mouthing off to me, kid, and I will give the whole kingdom to David. And that might be your life. Now, he doesn't know that David has sworn to Saul that he wouldn't kill his descendants. Abner's not telling him this. Abner has taken opportunity to basically rule. And keep him as a figurehead. And Abner sent messengers to David on his behalf, saying, "Whose is the land?" Saying also, "Make league with me. Behold, my hand shall also be with thee to bring out all of Israel unto thee." And he said, "Well, I will make a league with thee, but one thing I require of thee, and that thou shalt not see my face, unless you first bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come to see my face." So he's saying to Abner, "You want to make peace with me? You want to unite the kingdoms and make sure we stop? Because this is like 2 years of civil war here." He's like, "Bring me my legitimate wife, who is the king's daughter," because that would make him the legitimate heir to the throne. He's not asking him to kill Ishbosheth. He doesn't want anything bad to happen to Ishbosheth. He has sworn to Saul that he will not destroy his seed. But if he is not older, because the other guy is 10 years older, but if he is the leader, he's more fit to rule or whatever, he can be a legitimate heir to the throne. There's nothing it's written in stone that it has to be the next eldest that is on the throne. It just has to be a legitimate heir. And Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband. Oh, so it's Ishbosheth. So David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, say, "Deliver me Michal." So this is Saul's. This is his brother-in-law. Okay, and he takes her from her husband. He's saying he's negotiating peace with Ishbosheth. And so Ishbosheth does it. So it looks like Ishbosheth is going to peacefully transfer the kingdom to David. Gives him back his wife, Michal, from her husband. And her husband went along weeping behind her. Remember, he's been now married to her. David has been on the run for probably 6-7 years now. So they've been separated for 6-7 years, and this other guy's been married to her for probably 5-6 years, and he's like, "But I like her." And David's like, "Well, you shouldn't have married my wife. She's mine now again." And then then Abner said to him, "Go, return," and he returned. He's like, "Beat it." This is about the power of the kingdom. You don't want to mess around and get yourself killed over some other man's wife that you married in your stupidity. And Abner had communicated with the elders of Israel, saying, "You sought for David in time past to be king over you." So notice that, and Abner had communication with the elders of Israel, saying, "You sought for David in times past to be king over you." In other words, you guys would have liked to have him as king over you in the past. He knows because he's Saul's right-hand man. And he said, "Now then do it, for the Lord has spoken of David, saying, by the hand of my servant David, I will save my people Israel out of the hands of the Philistine and out of the hands of their enemies." Now, Abner, who's been, remember, David is, they're sitting at the same table before Saul starts going after David. He probably knows what Samuel said. They probably know David's the guy. And Abner's like, let's call it a wrap, okay? It's probably everything Abner is doing is about negotiating a secure position for himself and his household in the new administration. He's probably not legitimately saying, "Let's see if I can rule," okay? He is not a charismatic dude. He's a commander of the military. Nobody's anointed him. No prophets with him. He's got Saul's punk son, and he's probably literally doing this to negotiate a position where he's going to be commander in David's army now. That's probably what his goal is. Or at least, retire as a commander and have his house be safe and secure. So Abner came to David at Hebron with 20 men with him, and David made Abner and the men that were with him a feast. And Abner said to David, "I will arise and go, and I will gather all Israel to my lord the king, that they may make a league with thee, and that thou may reign over them, and all that thy house desires." And David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. And behold, the servants of David and Joab came from pursuing a troop. In other words, we've been out in a raid or pursuing maybe some Philistines that were raiding them or whatever, in a great spoil with them. But Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he had gone in peace. When Job and all the hosts that were with him were come, they told Job, saying, Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and he sent him away, and he's gone in peace. Now Abner's ticked. This is David's nephew, and that guy killed our younger brother, and you just let him go? Now, Job is going to be trouble, because Job has his own. He's David's nephew, but they're probably pretty close in age. Remember, David's the youngest, and this is probably a son of his older sister. And Job is David's kind of military commander, almost right-hand man, but he often is going to speak up and talk down to David. Sometimes he's right. He's not always wrong in the things he does. But he has his hands dirty, and he doesn't fully respect David's authority, and sometimes he does his own thing. Okay, this is why he's going to be a problem. So David is trying to negotiate the peaceful transition of power to unify the kingdom of Israel so they can get back to going after the Philistines, who have kicked their butt and occupied a bunch of their cities. And Job's thinking about personal revenge for his stupid nephew, who tried to run down a military beast by himself and got himself killed. And the guy's literally like, I'm not trying to kill you, quit chasing me. And eventually it's like, okay, it's you or me, and he kills him. So it's like your cousin was kind of stupid. He didn't know what was going on. He was just trying to be a hero like his family, and he got himself killed. This is politics. This is bigger than one guy's life. And so Job came to the king. He said, what have you done? Abner came unto thee. Why is it that thou hast sent him away, and why is he quite gone? Thou knowest Abner the son of Ner, that he came to deceive thee, and to know the going and thy coming in, and to know all thou doest. See, Job thinks he thinks he's smarter than David. David's negotiating the surrender of a kingdom. He knows what Abner's leverage is. He knows what Abner's trying to get out of the situation, which is just security. Transfer the position over to him. Abner and Ishbosheth aren't even getting along. And he just wants to get what he's got and just, be a noble, basically. And Job's like, no, he's setting a trap for you, and you're letting him in, you idiot. And when Job had come out of David, he sent messengers after Abner, which brought him again from the well of Sirah, but David knew it not. So he basically sent fake messengers to have an ambush on Abner and say, David wants you to come back. He wants to talk to you about something. And when Abner was returned to Hebron, Job took him aside to the gate to speak with him quietly, and smote him there under the 5th rib, and he died for the blood of Asahel, his brother. Now, I don't know what this means, under the 5th rib, it's the 5th from the bottom, 5th from the top, stabbed in the heart. I don't know why the 5th rib is important, but maybe he's just doing it because it's significant. I don't know. And afterward, when David heard it, he said, I and my kingdom are guiltless before the Lord forever from the blood of Abner, the son of Ner. Joab's like eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and it's like, no. We are talking national level politics, and what went down was a mess. Let it rest on the head of Job and all his father's house. Now remember, Abner was on his way. Think about this. Abner was on his way to basically secure the loyalty of all the elders of Israel for David. And Job kills him. See how stupid Job is. But he thinks he's smarter than David. This is not going to be the first time he does this. And on all his father's house, and let it not fail from the house of Joab, one that has, and this is what David says to the house of Joab, okay? He says, afterwards when David heard it, he said, I and my kingdom are guiltless before the Lord forever for the blood of Abner the son of Ner. Let it rest on the head of Joab and on his father's house. This is his brother-in-law. And let there not fail from the house of Job one that lacks an issue, or that is a leper, or that leans on a staff. In other words, a cripple, a leper, somebody who has no heirs, that falleth on the sword, somebody who commits suicide, or that lacks bread. He's cursing his whole house. Or cursing his father's house. So Joab and Abishai his brother slew Abner because he had slain their brother Asahel at Gibeon in battle. Abishai is probably part of the conspiracy, but Job's the one who's running it, and he is not happy with Job. And David said to Job and to all the people that were with him, rend your clothes and gird with sackcloth and mourn before Abner. And David himself followed the bier. In other words, the carrying up his body. Okay? He's like, act like you're sad. He's ticked. He's really ticked. Be sad and cry. Why? This was going to be a peaceful transition of power, and he was going to secure the loyalty of all the elders to me in a peaceful transition of power, and you idiots killed him. You guys are idiots. And the king lamented over Abner and said, died Abner as a fool dies? Thy hands were not bound, nor thy feet put into fetters. As a man falls before wicked men, so fellest thou. And all the people wept again over him. And when the people came to cause David to eat meat while it was yet day, David swears, saying, so God do to me more also if I taste bread, or else until the sun come down. I'm fasting for Abner. I'm mourning. I'm grieving for Abner. This was not my call. I'm really upset about this. Remember, when he was in the house of Saul, him and Abner fought alongside each other. They were never beefing directly. Abner was loyal to Saul, and Saul wanted to kill him. And all the people took notice of it, and it pleased them, and whatsoever the king did pleased all the people. Your cousin got himself killed because he was stupid and he didn't realize, you're trying to fight a lion, and you're a lone hyena, and you got yourself killed because he's telling you, back off or I'm going to have to defend myself, kid. Now, for all the people and all Israel understood that day that it was not of the king to slay Abner the son of Ner. He's making it very plain. He's humiliating himself to show this was not my doing or my will. And the king said to the servants, know ye not that there is a prince and a great man fallen this day in Israel? And I am weak through the anointed king, and these men, the sons of Zeruiah, be too hard for me. He said, I am this day weak, though I am anointed king, and these men, the sons of Zeruiah, be too hard for me. The Lord shall reward the doer of evil according to his wickedness. Okay? David sees Job as a severe problem right now. The problem is he is his right hand over his main guard. Okay? David is going to see Job as a problem his entire life. Remember, he's like 32 now. He's going to die when he's 70. So 40 years from now, Job's probably about his age. He's probably about his equal militarily. David does not like him, but he needs him. And at the end of his life, he's going to be like, get rid of that dude. When Saul's son heard that Abner was dead in Hebron, his hands were feeble and all the Israelites were troubled. Remember, there was going to be a peace. There was going to be an end to this 2-year civil war after they just got their butts kicked by the Philistines. And Saul's son had 2 men that were captains of the bands. Okay, now these 2 idiots are going to step up and say, we'll make sure how. Now that we can't have a peaceful transmission of power, which they were going to do, Ishbosheth was in on it. He got David's wife back. Okay, they were going to have a peaceful transition of power. These guys mucked it up. So these yahoos are going to be like, well, let's just kill Ishbosheth then, and then they'll have nobody else to follow but David. That will make everything happily ever after. So Saul's son had 2 men that were captains of the bands. So these would have been people who were under Abner. The name of one was Bana, and the name of the other was Rechab. And the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite and the children of Benjamin, for Beeroth was also reckoned to Benjamin. Now I'm curious about this Rechab because they had these people, the Rechabites, who are all the way in the days of Jeremiah that are called the Rechabites. And I'm curious to know if they're related. Jonadab, the son of Rechab. It might be or it might be a different Rechab. So we're not going to try to solve that Scooby-Doo mystery right now. And he said, let's see. And he said, and the Beerothites fled to Gitaim and were sojourners there to this day. So this might have been a foreigner. And Jonathan's son, let's see, hold on, let's look at another translation. I'm sorry. For Beeroth is also considered part of Benjamin, and the Beerothites fled to Gitaim and have been aliens there until this day. So it looks like this is probably like a Canaanite city that they took, and it's part of their territory. It said, now Jonathan, Saul's son, Now Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son crippled in his feet, and he was 5 years old when the report of Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel. And his nurse took him up and fled. And it happened that in a hurry to flee, she fell, and he fell and became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth. So the sons of Rimmon and the Beerothite and Rechab and Baanah departed and came to the house of Ishbosheth in the heat of the day while he was taking his midday rest. And they came in the middle of the house as if to get wheat, and they struck him in the belly, and Rechab and Baanah, his brother, escaped. So they're like, we will just murder David's rival. Apparently these guys aren't privy to the fact that there was going to be a peaceful transition of power, and they thought, well, Abner's dead now. This is bad. This could keep the war going. Let's just murder Ishbosheth, and that will draw favor to David, because it always goes well when people kill the house of Saul and brag to David about it. No, don't do that. And when they came to the house, he was lying dead on his bed in the bedroom, and they struck him and killed him and beheaded him, and they took his head and traveled the way of Arabah all night. So in other words, they're taking a long way around. Then they brought the head of Ishbosheth to David at Hebron and said to him, behold, the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, your enemy, who sought your life. Thus the Lord has given my lord the king vengeance this day on Saul and his descendants. David's like, oh, people think he's like Saul or like a pagan king. He's trying to be godly in how he does things, and other people are having their own bright ideas, and they're making it worse. They're making him like any common king, and he's not happy here, okay? He's like Jesus when they're like, do you want us to call lightning on them? No, you idiots. I'm not that kind of king. David answered Rechab and Baanah, his brothers, sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, and said to them, as the Lord lives, who has redeemed my life from all this distress, when one told me, saying, behold, Saul is dead, and thought he was bringing good news, I seized him and killed him in Ziklag, which was the reward I gave him for his news. How much more, when wicked men have killed a righteous man in his own house on his bed, shall I now require his blood from the hand of them who destroyed him from the earth? Remember, Ishbosheth has never done anything to David. Ishbosheth got David his wife back. Ishbosheth was going to transfer the kingdom to David peacefully, if not for his stupid-ass men killing Abner. And now these stupid-ass men kill Ishbosheth to try to, seal the deal. And he's just, And David commanded the young men, and they killed him. They cut off their hands and feet and hung them on the up beside the pool in Hebron. And they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in the grave of Abner in Hebron. So they buried the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, alongside the grave of Abner in Hebron. This is all just mucked up. This is just David is trying to do the noble thing here. And everybody else is getting in the way and being stupid. And many of them are now dead, but not all of them. And these problem people, he's going to have problem people in his life forever. And he's trying to do the right thing, except with Uriah the Hittite. But guess what? When he wants to do something with Uriah the Hittite, he knows who his go-to guy is. And that's why Job's still around. Oh, this is so ugly. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, behold, we are bone of your flesh. In other words, here's no more house of Saul that we could crown. He's just got this one crippled grandkid. Previously, when Saul was king over us, you were the one who led out Israel and go, and the Lord said to you, you will shepherd my people Israel, you will be ruler over Israel. So apparently, the word of Samuel has gotten out to these people. Remember, he's got other prophets in Samuel who know, and they've spread word around. So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and David made a covenant with them before the Lord at Hebron, and they anointed David king over Israel. So he was king over Judah, one tribe, now he's king over the whole. They have anointed him, which is like a ratification of Samuel's anointing. They did the same thing with Saul, okay? And this is the people saying, we swear fealty to you. We will be faithful to you. We acknowledge the legitimacy that God has chosen you. And David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned 40 years. So I'm going to call that it because Then we're going to get into David's reign. 2 Samuel is going to be 24 chapters, and I'll try to do this in 2 sections to get into David's reign. And then the end of David's reign is going to be he's going to die in chapter 2 or chapter 3 of 1 Kings, okay? Remember, these books were originally the book of Gad, or the book of Samuel, the book of Samuel the seer, the book of Gad the seer. And remember, they're saying in those days they called a prophet a seer, and then Nathan the prophet. So that's how you can tell Nathan's the last one. They eventually are calling them prophets now and not seers. So you have Samuel the seer, Gad the seer, Nathan the prophet is going to be the last part. And Gad's still around towards the end, but when you get into 1 King, Nathan is involved in the crowning of Solomon. So that's how you can tell Nathan is the third one. But when these books get compiled, and I believe they're compiled by Jeremiah at the end, Jeremiah is going to just have 4 books, and they're just going to be called the 4 books of the Kings, because it's really about Samuel seems to close the period of the judges and open the period of the kings, and this is the period of the kings. And so it's really the prophets keeping track of the judges and kings. So I should be able to get through this next section in a couple videos, and then we're going to get into the book of Kings. And when we get into the book of Kings, when we get to a prophet, we're going to stop and we're going to read that whole prophet, and I'm going to put that in context for you guys so you understand what's going on. And then those of you who are following my Revelation book and stuff and understand how I'm paralleling things to see what's going to happen in the future, we'll have a good framework for that. So all of that is probably going to take me 6 months. Easy, if not more, if not a year. But if you guys stick with me over the next year, you're going to know the Old Testament like I know the Old Testament. And then by the time we get to the New Testament, you're going to think everyone's idiots like I think everyone's idiots, because nobody knows the Old Testament, so they don't understand the New Testament, and they certainly don't understand prophecy. And that's why we have 50,000 denominations. So hope you guys are blessed by this. Again, we are now David is now officially king of all Israel. And this is going to be the close of the end of Saul and the rise of David. So hope you guys are blessed by this. Have a great rest of your week. Batman out. Peace.
Peace, I'm out. I'm Batman.